Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's Wednesday, August 21st, 2024 at 6 p.m. And it's a regular meeting of the Pacific Grove City Council. Glad that you're here. I'll call the meeting to order and note that all council members are present and then turn to Council Member Beck.
Please stand.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have a motion to approve the agenda and continuing item 11A, that's code of conduct to a date uncertain.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, on to item 2A, we have a presentation from Mr. Roger Gilbert. Please come forward and your slides are queued up.
Okay.
I hope.
Slides are queued. How do we advance them, or do I do it? Okay. Terrific. Yes.
I'll get those up for you.
Thank you for having me. I had the pleasure of meeting some of you before, but to the others, nice to meet you. There it is. Okay. So I'm here to just introduce myself. I'm the relatively new director of the SBDC for Monterey and San Benito counties. And we have our main office in Salinas. We currently have outreach centers in Monterey and Soledad. Next slide. In here? Okay, thank you. Better? We are hosted by the Monterey County Business Council, who currently has other programs as well. Next slide. That includes the Monterey Bay Apex Accelerator that helps companies with government contracting, building business back, Leadership Monterey, Monterey County Business Council itself, Defense Alliance, Business Alliance, and now the SBDC Small Business Development Center. And we once again cover Monterey and San Benito counties. Slide, please. And this is my resume and logos. Have a background in financial management, manufacturing, wholesale distribution, retail, commercial lending, and then commercial lending, more specifically, government guaranteed lending, SBA, USDA, State of California guaranteed loans, and a degree from USC and a graduate degree from UCLA. But if anyone is wondering, I root for the Trojans. Next slide, please. And the most important thing that we offer is free one-on-one expert counseling to small businesses, including pre-venture entrepreneurial ventures, people with an idea. So we go everywhere from, I have an idea, can you help me work through this idea and see if it's feasible and tell me where I can find the information I need, to an established business that has a very specific need. We're an established business, but we want to know more about AI. Can you help us? We want to know about social media. Can you help us with that? And we have a team of advisors that we've assembled and continue to assemble, who have different expertise in different areas and can work with a business one-on-one and help them with that. It's free of charge to the clients. We're funded by, next slide, please. Next slide is fine. Monterey and San Benito counties, one more. We're funded by the SBA, a number of state of California grant programs, and then local funding partners, including the city of Pacific Grove. So thank you. We want to earn your continued support. Next slide, please. We do that by delivering certain metrics, and we report those to our partners, and we report them to our grantors. And that is, we want to see that small businesses are started. We want to see that people are hired, that we help create jobs. We want to see that revenue is increased, and therefore tax revenue is increased as well. And we want to see that we provide an overall service to underserved groups in particular, and people who need our help across the two counties. And that's really all I have. I think we have a little bit of time left if anyone has any questions, but otherwise, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Council, Councilmember Clutty?
Thank you. Thanks for presentation. How often do you report to the city as far as these metrics you're collecting?
We will have a quarterly newsletter specifically for our funding partners that will tell you how many clients we have in your particular city, county, et cetera. We can't give you names necessarily without a waiver. That's confidential, but we can characterize the types of companies, the type of help that we provided, assisted with, and some of the results as they come along.
That'd be great to see. It hasn't arrived in my mailbox, but
No, we haven't been there a whole quarter yet.
okay.
So
All right. Yeah, I'd love to
uh,
see whatever trends are developing.
the end of September will be our first quarter, and then we'll report shortly after that. But if council and staff are interested, I can forward a map, for example, with the number of clients in this area and a quick characterization of types of companies. That would be helpful.
And I'll add my thanks, and I hope entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs here in Pacific Grove take advantage. You mentioned this word twice. I'm going to mention it a third time: free.
Right.
The services are free, and thank you very much for your ongoing support of PG businesses.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. Right, on to announcements. We have our city attorney, Mr. Pyrick, remotely. Mr. Pyrick, any announcements?
Yeah, I have an announcement. How do I find my mute button? No, I don't have any announcements today. Thank you. I'm sorry for the delay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mogensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a couple of things this evening I'd like to bring up. The first one is the City of Pacific Grove and Pacific Grove Unified School District Subcommittee meeting is going to be on September 10th. It'll be at 5:30 and it'll be here in the City Council chambers. We'll have that agenda posted, I believe, right outside here pretty soon. Next thing is I wanted to just take a moment and just say thank you to the Public Works team, and especially Chad Thomas, who's been putting a lot of focus on the front plaza here outside the City Council chambers and a lot of the downtown areas. I think we've noticed quite a few changes, I think, and so cleaning it up after the rainy season last year, and I think it's looking good. So there's one big part that's left, and I understand we're still getting quotes on the roof and some of the cleanup on the roof that we're gonna do for the bird stuff. Next announcement I wanted to make is that we have a new library director. Her name is Rachel Gaither. I'll ask Rachel to come up for a moment and say hello, if you wouldn't mind. Rachel comes to us from most recently from the city of Carmel, so we stole her from pretty close by. Actually was in our library in 2019. You worked for us?
2018, 2019.
Yeah.
Yes. So honorable mayor and council, so good to see you. It's great to see so many friendly and familiar faces in this room. So as Matt had said, I was in PG from 2018, 2019, and then took off for San Jose for their public library system for about 4 years, and then was in Carmel for the last year. And I'm so excited and happy to be back home. And I'm looking forward to continuing and expanding the services and the work that the directors before me started. Right. Thank you. Welcome. Good to see you.
Come back.
And the final thing that I'll reserve is that I will ask Brian Anderson, who's promptly already there to make his announcement.
Yes, the police department would like put a plug in for our Pacific Grove Citizens Police Academy. We currently have 5 applicants and we are looking for 5 more applicants for the academy that starts September 12th and will run to October 24th for 7 weeks. It's a great opportunity for the community to get to know the police department, the officers working within the police department, and our professional staff. So once again, we're looking for 5 more participants. So please go online and apply. Thank you.
All right, we're now taking public comment. Please come forward to the podium. I think most people know the drill. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Susan Golbeck. I'm a former city council member. I've lived here for decades and I love this town. Almost a year ago, my friend and a businessman, and he raised his children here, Nader Aga, made a gift to the city. The huge butterfly stained glass window that used to hang in the Holman building for many decades. The problem I'm come to you with today is I can't seem to get you guys to move on it. And there's really no excuse that it's taken almost a year. So what I suggest is let's put it on the agenda. When I was on the city council, we had a problem with what we called the staffocracy, and we still have that problem, with all due respect. The decision about where this beautiful piece of art goes is not up to the staff. It's up to you and the public in a public meeting. When we had the meeting almost a year ago at the BNRC, they sent it back up to you almost completely unanimously. And the public were very enthusiastic. Not one person, this is really unusual in Pacific Grove, was against it. It's going to be a problem how we go forward because it's complicated. It's complicated by the fact that Nader is going to pay for the installation. So where we select to have it makes a difference in how much it's cost. He's already spent $15,000 with the city manager deciding on a location that the BNRC said was totally unacceptable. So what I would suggest to you is put the damn thing on the agenda and let's you guys in a public meeting decide how you want to go forward. First thing, do you want to accept the gift? I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful gift. It would be iconic in this butterfly town. But on the other hand, there may be problems with it, and I understand that. So let's talk about them. If you're going to accept the gift, then let's make a plan on how we can get going on this. I've spent a great deal of time on this. I've taken pictures. I've taken the public works director out and looked at all these sites, but it's not up to me. It's certainly not up to him where this thing stands. He was going to go to the museum and check on that as a location. One of the council members, I think it was Mr. Coletti, suggested that. Well, let's talk about it. What's wrong? What's right? It's the staff's job, in my view, is to give you a staff report that says, here's the problems with this. Here's the installation problem. Here's the theft problem. Here's this problem. You may not want to climb those hurdles in order to do it here. So maybe let's do it there. But these are, you might come up with things that they haven't come up with. And so what I say is, let's see, you might want to even have a subcommittee. I don't know. But we have to get moving on this because Nader's getting aggravated. He feels like he's being giving a very, very expensive and a very generous gift to the city. And you know what they say, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. This is something that what we could have in our town forever. It's butterflies. The butterflies are meant for Butterfly Town. So let's get on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Daniel Miller. Mr. Agha, one time before, actually was going to donate a very large fountain that he thought would be great to put on Fountain Street, you know, there where the little yield is and stuff. And the city at that time just ignored him because one council person didn't like him and didn't move forward with it. So I think it's time with things like that, that we be a little more proactive rather than just taking it for granted. So tonight I want to revisit all our favorite, the roundabout. I've spent the past couple of weeks taking my kids to school at the high school, going down 19th Street, coming into Sunset, where I went to all of those precursors to the decisions on the roundabout, brought it up the night that you guys approved going forward with it, that if you come to 19th Street and traffic keeps going along, you can never get across from 19th Street. I've spent 3 or 4 minutes sitting there not moving as it is now. So you put a roundabout in there, it could go on literally for half an hour. I've waited at that stop sign there at 19th Street longer this week on multiple days than I've ever spent at that intersection where they're putting the roundabout. And you put in the roundabout, there will be no break in traffic. It'll just be people constantly coming up Forest. And this hasn't been addressed, even though I've brought it up at every single meeting, every single discussion, every time this has gone on. So please go visit it. Instead of making decisions based on a consultant that gets paid more and more money as the project goes along, please go up there yourselves and see what the situation is. I asked that consultant when he was here after you guys voted to approve it, I asked him how much time he'd actually spent at that intersection, and Dan Go actually took him, our public works director, took him and turned him away from me and pushed him away from me rather than allowing them to answer. So for $250,000, I guess we aren't allowed an answer as to how much time he's actually spent there. I'd love to know how many projects he's done for roundabouts where there's actually pedestrians, not just adult pedestrians, but little pedestrians. You know, that great idea down here to take out the crosswalk going across from Victorian Corner across the street. Every time I've been down there, ever since that was done, I see people walk where the crosswalk used to be and cross that street. So there was another genius idea that really played out well. And I think we really got to start looking at the decisions we make in this town concerning traffic and pedestrian safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
I'm Jane Haynes. After the last council meeting, I was jubilant. I thought that the amendment you approved meant that the Public Works Department, or whenever staff brought you a report, that they had to first get it approved by the appropriate committee, like the BNRC. So I thought, finally, we're going to have transparency about the sanctuary management plan. But a few days later, I learned that the amendment didn't mean what I thought it meant, and that Public Works can continue presenting their own annual report without BNRC approval. Well, my mother was from North Carolina, and she raised me and my siblings on Proverbs. And one of those Proverbs was, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I never quite understood about skinning the cat, but I realized it meant that if you can't get things done one way, then you can try another way. So that's what I'm going to do tonight. And I will come back when the consent agenda item, I think it's item 8C comes up, and I will attempt to skin the cat another way. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Carmelita Garcia, Pacific Grove resident. Thank you for your service. I'm here to speak about Car Week. The impact that Car Week has on our community really needs to be weighed before next year. Cars were speeding up and down Forest Avenue until 2 a.m. Friday morning. You could hear them speeding around Ocean View Boulevard very late at night. The noise created by these cars is such that I can't help but to wonder if they are violating our municipal code, chapter 11.96, unlawful noises. It reads in part, unusual noise which disturbs the peace or quiet of any neighborhood or which causes discomfort or annoyance to any reasonable person residing in the area. The code continues to list standards, some of which are the level of the noise, the intensity, the proximity of the noise to residential sleeping areas, and the time of day or night the noise occurs. The exhausted noise issues have an impact on our local environment. There is the marine sanctuary, our wildlife that need protections, and we are the stewards. So what can be done? First and foremost, there must be police presence. On social media, you'll read that this topic continues on in discussion, asking the questions, why weren't these drivers stopped and why wasn't there police presence in the mid to late evening? Come next year, scheduling for this event needs to begin months in advance. And if the department determines it is going to be short coverage, reach out to our neighboring cities, the Highway Patrol, Sheriff's Department, to see if they can help, even if it's for a few hours. We have baby gulls fledging, meaning they can't fly yet, but end up in the street and they get ran over by cars. Harbor seals born recently are still working on getting acclimated. They are extremely sensitive to noise. There was one fawn killed, one fawn injured, and a doe was killed. The doe that was killed left behind twins. I've received communications that her twins are wandering around to this very day looking for her. Yesterday, I received a call regarding another death of a fawn, and this afternoon, I received a call of an injured doe. This is the largest group of combined deaths and injuries this season. And what brought this all on? What changed? Well, it was Car Week, and this is totally unacceptable. So we need to send a strong message that we care about our community, our residents, and our wildlife. Finally, I would encourage consideration of some sort of fee being attached to hotel stays or a fee passed on to the organizers of Car Week and actually any event throughout the peninsula. We have the AT&T Food and Wine Festival, Jazz Festival, and so on. These events bring in additional traffic and tourists who may or may not know about the wildlife we have here. And the fees could be placed into a fund specifically for our local wildlife, education, protection, and so on. We can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Peak, council members and staff. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Karen Paul. I live in Pacific Grove and I'm your rep on the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District Board. I'm currently in my fourth year of a four-year term, and looks like I will be your rep for a bit longer because I decided to run it for a second term. I filed, no one else did, and so I am now deemed elected. But I'm happy to serve because we're making progress on water supply. And I came tonight to just update you on a couple of things. I'm sure that because you have a representative on the Monterey One Water Board, you I'm sure get updates on the expansion of Pure Water Monterey, which you may have, forgive me if I'm telling you what you already know, but it's proceeding on schedule, expected to be fully operational, right, by the end of next year, which is terrific. Another 2,275 acre feet of water a year. This is new water supply. It's really wonderful. But I wanted to let you know that the Water Management District is working on how to allocate the water. And our board meeting on Monday evening, our general manager, Dave Stoll, gave a presentation on the proposal that the staff has been working on. And they're going to be, there's going to be, they're going to be meeting with general manager, the cities, they're going to be reaching out to the cities and other jurisdictions to present the plan, to get feedback, before anything becomes final. So they, there's already a meeting scheduled for September 12th. You probably got an invite to it. Yes, good. Dave is reaching out, before he reaches out to councils, he's reaching out to city managers and some staff involved in environmental planning, because it's complicated and technical, and that's the best first step. But every jurisdiction, under the proposal, every jurisdiction will get a certain amount of water to begin with, to start allocating. And you'll hear more about the proposal. Dave will, well, the district, probably Dave Stoll, will be making the rounds of city councils in October or November. The problem of the moratorium on new meters still exists. We are working on a plan to try to get that lifted as soon as possible. But unfortunately, that is but we're working to get it ASAP. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Jenny Hart. I'm actually from Carmel. Do have a child that graduated from Pacific Grove in 2015, and I'm here to talk about ovarian cancer awareness. My mother passed away in 2017 after being diagnosed after a 6 to 9 months period of time in which it was hard to get awareness to what was actually going on. And by the time she was diagnosed, she was already stage 3. So to keep me on track, I'd like to kind of summarize what I wanted to present and make everybody aware of. As someone who's been affected by ovarian cancer and ovarian cancer research advocate leader for California, I reached out to the mayors along our Central Coast to request support for California's ovarian cancer community, asking for proclamations formally designating September as Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. If anybody here wants any, I do have just some copies of symptom cards, how it's diagnosed, and then also some statistical data to provide. I lost my mom in June of 2021, 5 days after she celebrated her 76th birthday and after 2 reoccurrences. The OCRA has lost 4 of its 125 advocates just in the last few months. Education and awareness regarding ovarian cancer is specifically paramount because symptoms are often vague or altogether absent, and there is no early detection test for the disease, which makes diagnosis particularly difficult. Once someone is diagnosed, treatment options are often limited, and the cancer progresses quickly. Only 50% of women diagnosed with ovarian cancer live 5 years beyond their diagnosis, with survival rates directly linked to the cancer stage when diagnosed. Ovarian cancer is the #1 cause of gynecological cancers, yet there's been limited changes in mortality rates in decades, unlike other forms of cancer. My 3 maternal aunts had breast cancer. My mom passed away of ovarian cancer. I have 4 daughters and 2 granddaughters, so it's important to me that I advocate for their future. Please educate the women in your life to be aware of the following symptoms: abdominal or pelvic pain, bloating, difficulty eating and urinary frequency that are not the norm and have not resolved in 2 weeks. And keep in mind such things as BRCA positive results, increased age of 55 plus, postmenopause and family history of breast, uterine, colorectal, or ovarian cancer, increasing risk. The OCRA is offering free genetic testing through Color Health, regardless of income, which I would suggest for any female. In the meantime, encourage women to be confident in advocating for themselves or assist them in doing so if they're not comfortable. The American Cancer Society estimates 19,680 cases of ovarian cancer will be newly diagnosed in 2024, including 2,300 new cases in California and 1,000. Improving outcomes for patients, families, and caregivers in the future, and in memory of my mother.
Thank you, and sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, members of the council, for listening to what I have to say. We're back on the issue of a parking ticket that I received in this community back in May of this year. We had a hearing in regards to it. The city attorney was in attendance via Zoom. A couple other city employees were also there. I received a ticket for having my tire, individual tire, on the sidewalk. My vehicle is 24 plus feet long. It is a full-sized pickup truck. It's longer than a Suburban, okay? And I thought it was egregious of Amanda Balchiera of the Pacific Grove Police Department. I guess she's a meter maid, goes around writing tickets in this community. She has quite the reputation. And not, in the opinion of the offenders, not the best reputation for being trite and issuing tickets for inconsequential matters. Where I was parked was in front of Chase Bank. There was over 15 feet of open sidewalk when I parked there, okay? In the report that is presented to the hearing officer, they state that my front tires, plural, were on the sidewalk. That is not the case. An individual tire was over the curb and on the sidewalk. I feel the $48 ticket was unreasonable. The hearing officer reduced the ticket to $25. Well enough. I planned on appealing that ticket, but unfortunately, and I'll let you look at it and you can see, it was addressed incorrectly. I don't want over the air the address. It took a couple weeks for them to determine who I was at the post office because they have over 1,000 PO boxes. Eventually I got it. By then it was too late to file an appeal in Superior Court. I feel I'm entitled to my $25 back where they had reduced the ticket to $25. I might be trite over this matter, but people need to realize that let's do proper, what I call community enforcement when it comes to parking tickets. I feel very strongly and positively towards the city of Pacific Grove. As the city clerk can tell some of you later, okay, I've instructed her that I'm to remain anonymous in that issue that I presented with her. But the point that I'm trying to make is people from outside the community that get a ticket for something like that may not have a positive feeling about it. Now, when you try to talk to the city attorney, all you get is voicemail. He doesn't have a secretary that answers his phones or something. I don't know what's going on there, but it's frustrating. I don't do voicemail. Why can't they have somebody answer the phone? I showed the community development director this letter showing that it was addressed incorrectly. So I didn't get it in time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time. So hopefully things change.
Welcome.
City Council, Mayor, City Manager, my name is Mike Gibbs. I'm on the Economic Development Commission. I'm here on my own behalf. One of the great things about City Council in a small town is what you just saw here. People get up and they give their opinion and you have a real diversity. And I always thought that a larger council was more diverse in terms of its ability to receive comments and respond. I spent in another life as a business turnaround person, working with large companies, forming teams. And I always found that the ultimate team was somewhere around 7 or 8 people. Now, this is city council is kind of interesting. It's more of a board of directors. You have say over a lot of different parts of the city. You have to know about traffic, water, code compliance, all up and down the line. So more members seems to me to be more beneficial. And that's my experience in business also. So I'm not here to advocate one way or the other, but I would like a better explanation at some point. And I know all the arguments are in on Measure Z. So we're talking about taking the city council from 6 to 4 members plus 1 with the mayor. And so my experience is, and questions I just would have, I'd like to get them answered. Right now, I'm leaning against, right? And I think having more members would increase the diversity of the council members, open the council to more collaboration, and not having it would reduce effective representation of the city of Pacific Grove and harm residents' ability to make their voices heard. We have a large number of Brown Act commissions, boards, and task force. Each one of you is a representative to one of those. It's an awesome task that you have to perform. We also have representation at the county, water, traffic, safety, et cetera, down the line. I think a better 7-member council plus mayor is a better arrangement to address those concerns. Also, Pacific Grove is a general and not a general law city. We are California charter city, one of few in California. And it really confers, I think, a special status, and a 7-member council, including the mayor, I think would honor that status. Just to finalize this, there's the social aspect of the team decision-making part of it, right? A larger council will have more opinions on a given issue, increased problem-solving capacity, ability to listen to the community, uncovering innovative and practical solutions to everyday problems. So right now I'm leading against reducing the council to 4+1. I think overall, the city of Pacific Grove deserves a 7-member representation. I think it's an awesome task that you've got, a lot of work. Let's spread it over 7 members. It's more likely that you're going to have an expert among 7 members, a leader among 7 members. 4 members, easier to control, easier for one person to push it in one direction or the next. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your listening to this. And I appreciate hearing from anybody that's got a diverse opinion on that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any virtual public comment?
We do, Mayor. Lisa Chioni.
Thank you. I just had a suggestion in response to Susan Golbeck's comment. And maybe the suggestion won't be acceptable to Mr. Aga or others, but the ARB has had on their agenda for the last 2 months an item about the billboard style signage in the windows of the Holman building that is does not conform even close to city ordinance for signs. And it's been, this item at ARB has been continued twice now with no reason given that I heard or read. And so these windows, the realtor who's got his gigantic flashy billboard style signs in there says something about the design just makes it too hard to do anything else. Well, I think the butterfly glass art might be very appropriate to return to the Holman building. Perhaps it doesn't work without natural light behind it, but even maybe some low voltage, some sort of backlighting might help if that were the case. And so this just came to me hearing this because I didn't know why this had never, why this piece hadn't been installed. And I wasn't wild about the places that were suggested, but bringing it back home to the Holman building might be a lovely thing if it works. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Tom Aikman.
Hi, thank you. I missed the first few minutes of the meeting, so if you covered this in general announcements, let me apologize for missing it. But my call is simply about the noise from the car week that we heard in the last few weeks. I've been here a long time, and I don't remember anything quite as noisy as it was this time. And so if you look in you had to be both deaf and blind not to have heard some of the hot rodding and the racing that was going on around town at all hours. And the Herald yesterday reported that in the city of Monterey, Monterey police made 251 traffic stops, issued 165 citations, towed 5 cars, and arrested 18 people during Car Week for traffic violations. I wouldn't expect the numbers to be that high in PG, but I wonder if we did any of that. Some years I think we have not. I don't know if we've picked up enforcement or dropped enforcement. I'm really not sure. But it was really seemed to be out of hand during this year. And I wonder if it's just not going to get worse and worse and worse if we don't do something about it. Thank you.
Other hands are raised, Mayor. Oh, I'm sorry. I just saw one hand and I think it went down. Thank you.
Okay, on to the consent agenda. We just heard Ms. Haynes wants to pull item 8C. Council wishing to pull any other item from the consent? Seeing none? Any member of the public wishing to pull a consent agenda item other than 9C?
I do have a hand raised here, Mayor. Nancy Parsons?
Yes, thank you for taking my call. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we're at the consent agenda. Did you want to pull a?
No,
an
I
item
I
consent
want to
agenda?
make a comment about Car Week. And I raised my hand, but I wasn't called.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, do you want to allow that call? Okay, we're going to allow it. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for taking my comment. I'm a longtime resident of Pacific Grove. The Concourse Car event used to be a small 2-day event in Pebble Beach. Now it has become a 7 to 10 day event attracting 80,000 people, according to the Monterey Herald. 80,000 people. And I have to ask, when will enough be enough? I mean, I know this event brings in money to the local economy and charities. And yes, that is a good thing. But how much are local communities expected to put up with? And incidentally, not all businesses reap a profit during Car Week. I was in Trader Joe's twice last week and it was empty. The clerk there said, this is the slowest week all year because the locals are afraid to come out. So how much are citizens that live here expected to sacrifice? How much do communities have to prostitute themselves to often rude, narcissistic people that have no regard for the people that live here? I hear car racing through Pebble Beach all night long. What happened to the zero tolerance motto? Where are the police or highway patrol when these people are racing down our streets? Where is the regard for our neighborhoods, schools, dog walkers, kids walking to school, and local wildlife? Cars are speeding, passing dangerously, blasting their mufflers and engines without any regard for the people that live nearby. I would also like to remind you that tourists come here also for peace, quiet, and tranquility that our town has to offer, and also to see the deer. So what kind of message are we giving our kids when we accept this kind of behavior? The older generation is passing them a planet on fire due to global warming. Automobiles are 20% of the problem, and yet we put the car up on a pedestal and tell the kids it's all right if you're late to school due to the concourse traffic, or too bad if you can't sleep at night because of loud racing cars using our streets as a racetrack. Please consider this next year when all these people come here. Please put in more rules. I think we can do better, and I am also very concerned about our wildlife. Thank you.
Right, may I have a motion to approve the modified consent agenda?
So moved, Your Honor. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And so we'll move right directly to item 8C, Monarch Sanctuary Annual Report. Ms. Haynes. Welcome.
I attended the July 24th BNRC meeting. And it had an agenda item that was the same as 8C tonight. It was for the BNRC to receive the Monarch Butterfly Report. And approximately 8 people commented. Some suggested changes, but it was a receive report item. So that doesn't require a vote. No motion was made. And tonight, what you have is identical to what they had on July the 24th. No changes. This violates Pacific Grove City Code, Section 324080, Subdivision I, which says that the BNRC is tasked with advising on all matters concerning the Monarch Grove Sanctuary. If you looked at the public records attached to my letter for tonight, you can see that the Monarch Subcommittee has given no written reports in the last 4 years. So as an alternative way of skinning the cat, I request you not to accept tonight's report, but rather direct that it be returned to the BNRC for a public hearing, followed by the BNRC advising you whether it wants to accept the report as it currently is or make changes. And you will be the ultimate decision makers. I mean, you'll find out what the BNRC wants. You'll find out what the staff wants. You'll hear public testimony and you'll be the ultimate decision makers. But I looked at the values on the city website and it says we strive to uphold the highest work ethic. Well, obeying the law is part of the work ethic. And the law says that the BNRC provides all of the advice on the Monarch Sanctuary. So I'm asking you tonight to return this to the BNRC, ask them to make a decision about it, and then bring it back to you before you receive it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Carmelita Garcia, resident of Pacific Grove. I just really want to point out and put a lot of emphasis on page 7 about this insecticide incident that occurred in January 2024. I would think that when new staff come on board, Public Works, particularly and especially regarding the Monarch Sanctuary, that they're given some sort of training or booklet or whatever about the use of pesticides and herbicides in Pacific Grove. And on the city's website, there's actually a plan. It's called the Integrated Pest Management Procedures and Guidelines. Everyone should have a copy of this. And I think this plan should be called to attention on the city's website for our community when they go out there and they want to take care of their gardens or kill their lawn or do whatever, they want to do. Because this is very important information and it's easy to follow. And it's a protocol that begins with the less harm you can do down to this is the last resort. So it's very easy to follow. But what I really want to comment on also is I went to the walkthrough at the Monarch Sanctuary. Some of you were there. I did not appreciate not one single iota of the scientist, Weiss, I think is his name, if he's the same one, standing there and going on and on and on, disrespecting Bob Picciali, who's a well-known member of our community, who has such a compassion for the Monarch Sanctuary and who has donated so much of his time for so many years to try and make it as best as it can. It's come with controversy, yes, but I will remind you all that in 2011, I think it was, the council at that time approved him bringing in the boxed eucalyptus trees, which seem to be the cusp of this disagreement. So I'm here to ask you to go to this individual, since the city pays for him, and that he conduct himself in a professional manner and to leave the disparaging comments he makes towards one of our community members, to just simply stop it. That's not what he's paid to do. So we all know the story, we all know the history, and so it just simply does not have to be repeated on and on and on. He's there to go through the plan and to answer questions, and that's it. So I would ask that somebody speak with him and ask him to just stop it. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Daniel Miller again. I agree with what Ms. Garcia just said. I went down to the walkthrough, and I was quite amazed, actually. I was told that morning the walkthrough was happening. The publicity on it was zero. There was no, when staff does their announcement, there was no announcement, hey, we're doing a walkthrough of the Monarch Grove Sanctuary. I believe it was like the next day or 2 days later, whatever it was, and absolutely nothing. And you go to the city's website and boy, can we update it at some point in time? We pay a whole lot of money for IT, and that website has stuff that is so antiquated. It still has rules as far as COVID, as far as what you can do in town. But my point is, I believe it was the last council meeting, I came up here and I said, I'd walk through there and it was a mess. There was debris everywhere, off of the eucalyptus trees, the bark peeling off. And it was just laying there, just a tinderbox. What's the first thing our expert that's paid a whole lot of money said? Yep, got to do something about all this bark and stuff that's laying around here because it's a tinderbox. And standing there was our head of public works and our city arborist. Why does it take Dan Miller? I don't have an arborist degree. I'm not the director of public works for what's he been here, a dozen years or something. And we still haven't gotten this down to where when the monarchs are gone, let's start cleaning it up and let's keep it all cleaned up till a little bit is left, because the studies are you have to have a little bit of ground cover when the monarchs come back. But this idea that's all propelled by a study, by going through the BNRC and everything else, when it should just be a given. Everybody should decide that when all this debris that could catch fire and that whole place could go up, let alone the whole neighborhood, that it's removed. There has to be no special permission, for goodness sake. This is a city that allowed a grove of eucalyptus that was behind a house, basically across the street and down a little bit, that allowed a whole grove of eucalyptus. Most people didn't know was a gathering place for more monarchs than have ever been in the Monarch Grove Sanctuary. And by lack of oversight and historical knowledge, it was allowed to be taken down a few years ago in return for somebody being able to expand the footprint of their house, which has never been looked into and should be. So at some point in time, let's get it together and be a little more proactive and get this stuff cleared up before it's a problem. And then it's, oh, remember when we were told we should have done that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christine Walkingstick. I am the chair of the BNRC. I am not here on official BNRC capacity because we did not make a motion, and I wanted to cover that with you this evening. The BNRC handbook, our newest revision from March 20th that was implemented, under consideration and action on an agenda item, page 14 and 15, says under number 4, deciding, that second paragraph says no motion is made if the agenda item is receive report unless the committee wishes to address recommended actions within the report. We did not find any discrepancies with the Creekside report. A little bit of history from last year. I was on the Monarch Sanctuary Subcommittee, as I am again this year. We requested a few things from Creekside, as well as the city maintenance. One request was for the Creekside report to come to us earlier, be provided earlier, and it did. It came a month earlier, for our request. The reason we put out that request is because maintenance does need to happen earlier than right upon when the butterflies are getting here. So my analogy was you don't do a kitchen reno right before your guests arrive, right? Like you do the spit polish. So in the spring, we do the heavy lifting, and in the fall, we do the light cleanup. And that's all outlined in the city's report of what maintenance has been done and what is about ready to be embarked upon, which we were, the 5 of us that were in attendance at the July 16th BNRC meeting, agreed upon. So no motion was made because we agree with the Creekside report this year. This year's report was more robust as per asked for. A lot of people suggest that it is regurgitated. A lot of this information is. It shouldn't change too much from year to year because it's a forest. I agree that some cleanup does need to be made, but as I too went through the walkthrough with Stu Weiss, he suggested certain things be left, some duff or some of that debris, that tree debris be left, and then some get swept up. He also suggested that native ground cover be planted so we can have some of that butterflies need to land on the ground for certain reasons, that would be kind of an ongoing, provide some assistance in that department. So I guess bottom line is we accepted the report and are in support of it and did not require a motion. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any virtual comment?
No hands raised, Mayor.
All right, council discussion on this item. Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do have a question for Mr. First, and that concerns the potential or the probable use of pesticides for the cluster of monarchs that were found on the ground. Has there been any toxicology analysis done on that group of butterflies that was found basically kind of just withering away on the ground?
Councilmember Coletti through the mayor. To start, I just want to clarify that there are no the monarchs in question were not found on sanctuary property. It's on an adjacent property on private property. And then to answer your question, yes, there was toxicology results that were performed. The facilitated by the museum staff and volunteers at the museum. And then I'm not sure exactly who they reported it to, but the kind of normal chain of command of agencies of an incident like that. And pesticides were found above a lethal expected amount on those butterflies that indicate an insecticide.
Do we have any idea who applied the insecticide and where?
The assumption would be it would be in some relation to the property owner. But
So is it an absolute fact, or has it been determined that the city is not responsible and has never applied any pesticides or anything that could have, I think, caused this problem?
I would say that there's no question that the city is not responsible for that incident. It was off the property of the city. It was on private property.
You think it might be worth contacting the property owner to let them know that?
We have been in contact with the property manager, not necessarily the property owner, but the facilities crew and the property manager. And they have denied use of any pesticides in that area and are aware of the results and have been encouraged and kind of informed on the kind of best practices and the importance of the issue.
How about Fish and Wildlife?
They've been looped in and they've been informed of the incident.
And as far as the report is concerned, has that been forwarded to the BNRC or to anyone, or do you have a copy even
of the toxicology report?
Yeah.
I do have a copy. I don't believe it was forwarded to the NRC, but but they were regularly informed of the incident.
Well, it would certainly be nice to understand exactly how that occurred. That's obviously a problem. And it is mentioned in the report, but I think maybe some follow-up on it would be good going forward.
And as part of that follow-up, Councilmember Coletti, we did discuss this with the property manager, and they do use a series of contractors we've talked to those contractors from from the people we talked to, we couldn't pinpoint an exact cause or anyone who was willing to kind of fess up to using insecticides in that area. But we're definitely going to make that a priority for outreach this off season.
Super.
And going to be in regular communication with the property managers to do our best to avoid that in the future.
I'll just make a few comments. I know Mr. First, Mr. Mogensen, and myself, we were at the sanctuary for Stu Weiss's presentation, and we stayed the entire time. It was not a huge crowd, but I thought it was pretty well attended. Residents, BNRC was there in force, and also members of Fish and Wildlife, as well as Monterey County Natural Resources. I'm sure, sorry, what is their official title?
The Monterey County Resource Conservation District.
Okay, thank you very much. So, and the museum as well that runs the docent program. So there was a wide range of agencies as well as the public there. And I've been coming to these presentations at the sanctuary for a number of years. And I thought this presentation, this last one, was better than ones I've heard in the past. Stu Weiss went and explained some of the underlying methodology and the reasoning for his recommendations. And he went back in time. He's been doing this for us for many years. And I thought he did a really good job. I'm glad to hear that BNRC was supportive of his report. You know, obviously situations will change in the future, climate, whatever, and we'll need to do the best we can to make a home for our monarchs. And last point is we have the bounds of the sanctuaries, public property, and so the city is in complete control, well, weather permitting and nature, of what actions humans take, but not outside. And we have a boundary outside the sanctuary that prohibits tree cutting during the overwintering period, but we don't have laws that require all the adjacent property owners to come to City Hall and get permission to do anything they want with their property. I mean, they do have to get permission to cut down trees, but the city doesn't have absolute authority over the adjacent property owners, and that makes sense, be it as it may. So this is received the report. Oh, Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you. I just wanted to address a couple of the topics that came up, since this is an appropriate forum to do so. And I appreciate the recognition that the BNRC didn't have any issues with this report this time, and that's why it was okay to receive the report. But I think it still speaks to the issue that we have about based on what our regulations are, what our code is, should we be receiving these reports as save the report? Because then there's no way to track whether the BNRC had any concerns. It seems like it might be cleaner to say what the actual recommendation is for the BNRC to push it forward, kind of like we do. I guess you could do alternate action, since there was an alternate action that was implied. But if that's the code, I just wanted to bring up the possibility that maybe we clean up how that's presented so that it looks more transparent, that the BNRC has discussed it and they've agreed with the report directly versus just receiving it, which that's not 100% clear. But glad that we have the new guidelines so that now there is the mechanism for them to not accept it in a different way and to discuss it and make recommendations if they don't. And then the other thing, Mr. Miller had pointed to the idea of, do we have to wait every year for the report to start the annual cleanup so that we can do that in time before the butterflies come. And so I don't know if, I'm guessing that's something with staff, and I'm not sure if that's relevant to this, because it seems like the point, I think, is that we need to approve this now, obviously, and accept it as well, because the sooner we do that, the sooner staff can start working on doing the cleanup. But I think it would be great going forward to look at whether we can do something where we say every year we will do this level of basic maintenance and then receive the report and go from there. I'm trying to circumvent the problem we ran into last year, where by the time the report was approved, the butterfly showed up before any work could be done. So I think that that would be worth us addressing going forward. Thank you thank you for the report and for noting the prior comments, because I did hear that that was done.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a follow-up question, George. It mentions on page 7 of the Creekside report under the insecticide incident, it mentions that a fuller report is being prepared outside of this annual report. Is that the report you were mentioning earlier, or is that fuller report still being developed?
My understanding, Councilmember Coletti, is that that report was being prepared by the museum staff and volunteers that collected the samples. And I think that they were working with the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation to create a separate report.
Okay, so but you mentioned you had a toxicology report already.
Yes, and also some interpretation by the Xerces Society.
Okay, and then there's this fuller report as well. Is that right?
I think they're one and the same, the fuller
Okay.
report and then the interpretation of the toxicology. So first came the toxicology report, which showed kind of a spike of 3 pesticides, and the specific chemicals that were identified weren't the kind of people that the experts weren't able to kind of pinpoint a specific insecticide or pesticide or brand name or anything like that, but said that there's a general association with those 3 pesticides with insecticides. So the assumption in their interpretation, if I'm to kind of give a quick summary of my recollection of it, this fuller report, my understanding was that these 3 pesticides could commonly be found in, like for example, an ant killer or some kind of an insecticide. And I think it's like the mayor alluded to, it's not necessarily illegal for someone to use an insecticide. While it's tragic and it's, we kind of mourn the loss of these butterflies, I don't know if there's necessarily like a punitive action that we can take for someone using an insecticide on private property. But I think that the only bright side of this is that it kind of informs us on where the education needs to be directed, and the outreach needs to happen to just impress upon people how important it is not to use insecticides or any pesticide, and especially not in proximity to our monarchs.
Yeah, I think this is an example where education and outreach, I mean, once the butterflies are dead, the enforcement isn't going to remedy that situation. So I guess outreach would be important. And, but to answer or to just kind of summarize what I think I heard you said is that the report has been finalized. There is only one report and that's finished.
Yes, and I don't believe that Stu Weiss in Creekside had anything to do with that report. I think that my understanding is that he is referencing the report that the museum staff created in collaboration with the Xerces Society.
Yeah, on page, he specifically mentions it's outside of the annual report. Okay, thank you.
And if you don't mind, while we're on the topic of outreach, I'd just like to give a quick plug. One of the things that the BNRC has kind of spearheaded starting last year, and we're doing again this year, is a neighborhood meeting that as we approach monarch season, or right as monarch season starts, to kind of inform the entire public, but specifically people that live in proximity to the Monarch Sanctuary in George Washington Park. And that event is being planned for October 6th this year. So we look forward to doing that, and pesticides will absolutely be a focus at that meeting.
Without further comment, move on to item 12A, Mr. Mogensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item refers to the city's cannabis program that we are building slowly over time. So Pacific Grove voters approved Measure M and N at the November 8th, 2022 general election, Measure M was an advisory measure that was asking the voters, should Pacific Grove have cannabis businesses and how many overall? Measure N established the tax on cannabis businesses at 6%. So as a result of these two measures passing, the city council directed the city manager and the city attorney to create the cannabis licensing program. So over the last couple of years, we've created two ordinances that will help us to vet this or to put this program forward. The next step for us now is to create a framework in how we're going to actually license the businesses. So at this point, Erica Vega with the city attorney's office been assisting us with coming up with our procedures to implement this program. And we have been discussing those procedures we looked at so far, and it occurred to us that probably the next prudent step is to look at hiring a consultant. And that consultant is going to help us to vet this program well, for one thing, before we put this forward. We want to make sure that we get all the bugs ironed out and learn from experiences of other cities. And possibly the consultant that will help us actually rate these applications prior to the council taking action to approve the process. So we feel that's the next logical step in this process. So we're here tonight to ask that the council allow us to go out and get some proposals. Some of the other advantages of doing this now is the proposals that we receive are going to have fees based into them that the consultant will charge to help us to review the applications that come in. Whatever fee that's established at for the city is going to be basically a pass through for the businesses. So it's something that's going to help us to build our fees for the cannabis businesses as well as we go forward in the final steps here of this program. So I believe that's all I have to report to you tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions. And Erica Vega, who's been involved from, I believe, day one in this, is also online to help us.
Thank you. Public comment? Anyone wishing to speak to this item? Virtual public comment?
No virtual public comment, Mayor.
Back to council. Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't tend to visit any cannabis places, but Mr. Wilkinson, just curious, did the city of Marina have any cannabis retail, and also did they use about the same process, or if they had any, do they have any?
Yeah, so I can report the city of Marina has 3 active licenses. They have a cap as well of 3 businesses in their city.
Do you know what the sales tax, just curiosity, what they received from those 3 businesses?
I believe it's been going down slowly. The first year was pretty high. It was about 400,000, and I think they projected 175 to start. However, there's been more businesses that have come on the peninsula, and I would imagine if you look back this year, I'm not there now, to know they probably received less this year than they did last year because the industry is getting a little more watered down, would be my guess.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Peduri.
Thank you, Mayor. This looks like the next logical step in the proceedings. Just for out of curiosity, how many such vendors or consultants are there in the market? Could you shed some light on that?
Sure, there's not as many as you would think, I guess. There's a whole lot that work for the cannabis businesses that help them through the process. But I know that HDL has a cannabis division that they help a number of cities in California. I think I looked up the numbers earlier today. They currently have, I guess, 170 clients, and they do 350 compliance inspections, and they do financial audits. So they're a pretty major, I guess, player in this sector. There's also a company called SGI that I believe Monterey is using this year, and they're smaller. I'm not sure if they have as many clients, but those are the 2 that I was able to find. There was another one that I was able to find on the internet, and they seem to be though out of Philadelphia. So I'm not sure if they would come out to California to help us or not.
Okay, thank you for that information. And I would say, considering that HDL has the vast kind of majority of clients in California, they may have probably seen a lot of action, so to speak, in the space with respect to litigation matters and whatnot. So it would make sense for us to actually see what we can do with HDL itself. I don't see a need for an RFP, but I'm okay either way. The other thing I wanted to find out is from an RFP perspective, is the cost going to be borne by the final operator? How does that play out?
So when we build our fees for our cannabis business applications, we'll have one component will be of the cannabis consultant that we bring on, because they're going to have a very technical part of reviewing applications. So that will be part of the fee. The other part will be the staff time that is involved in processing it. So it'll be built in to be a revenue neutral from that perspective for the city.
Yeah, I think I can go either way, but to me, like, seems like HDL will be the go-to kind of entity, especially if we want to wet things out with respect to what a lot of other cities are doing. I get it that Monterey has somebody else, but I would rather be cautious and just make sure that we're checking all check marks here with respect to consultant. But that's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Beck.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would rather put it out. In the past, the history with HDL has been a little aggressive as far as numbers, providing tax dollars to the city of Pacific Grove. I think at one point they were quoting 600,000, 400,000. I just want to work with a company that's realistic with us and work with the vendor as they come along. So I'd like to put it out for a request. And I do like the idea of having a smaller group, such as the one Monterey is working with. So thank you.
Councilmember Cleddy.
I'll echo what Councilmember Beck just said there. One of the reasons for even doing this in the city was that it was going to be a revenue generator, a significant revenue generator. And I think that that particular argument has fallen short and will continue to do so. It just makes sense that we send this out for an RFP. I mean, that's just a logical step. So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do that. We do that for just about everything. And we've been at this for a long time. So there's no reason to rush it now and short circuit the RFP process. So I'd like to see an RFP.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Oh, thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I agree with the RFP. I think that it would be nice for staff to get that guidance to make it a more efficient process. And, you know, we've already been at this for a long time, so there's no reason to try to rush it and do it ourselves if we don't have the in-house knowledge to be able to put that together in a reasonable, easy fashion. So I'm in support of the recommendation.
Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for bringing this, because I think that's a really good idea to bring in somebody who has expertise in the area, because we obviously wouldn't expect staff to have this kind of expertise. It's not kind of their daily work. And so I think it makes a lot more sense to keep staff available to work on their regular priorities and bringing somebody in who can really help us circumvent any problems that we might find. And I would agree that the RFP makes sense, because that gives us the opportunity to find out who would be the best fit for us. But it might also be worth checking with Monterey to see what their experience has been with SGI, to see if they have any concerns. That might be really helpful to know, so that when we do make that, maybe that's helpful to do before the RFP. But I think the RFP is always a good choice, just so that we kind of know what we're getting into and what's the best for our city.
This moves forward what the what the Pacific Grove voters told us in November 2022 to do. So I'm supportive. Councilmember Emilio, you'd like us make a motion? Great.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the city council authorize the city manager to issue a request for proposals for cannabis consulting services.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Right, on to item 13A, Mr. Mogensen.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, this is another one of those items that we're really happy to bring forward tonight. It's been a long, I think, road for everybody. Kicking this one off for us, though, will be our Human Resources Director, Letitia Livian.
Turn my mic on. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, staff, and members of the public.
The City and the Police Officer Association, POA, have been negotiating a successor to the Memorandum of Understanding that expired at the end of this June. The negotiations were conducted in good faith, fully collaborative, and were based on mutual benefits to the association and the city. During the negotiations, city negotiators met with City Council in closed session on several dates and proceeded with bargaining with City Council authority. A tentative agreement was reached with POA in July, and POA authorized the agreement. So tonight, staff is asking council to approve the agreement through a resolution. And if approved at the next city council meeting, staff will be submitting an ordinance to change the salary schedule to administer the COLA provided in this fiscal year for the POA. Okay, so here are some key negotiated items. It is a multi-year contract. The contract spans for 3 years from July 1st, 2024 to June 30th of 2027. There's a cost of living adjustment in each of the fiscal years, similar to the other bargaining groups. A 3% COLA, 3% cost of living adjustment will be provided in the contract. A joint salary survey with POA will be conducted in year 2 of the contract, and a market adjustment may be issued with council authority pending the results of that survey. In regards to city health benefits, we're matching what the other bargaining groups receive. There will be an increase to the employer contributions toward benefits for members with dependents and families. So an employee with 1 dependent will go from $1,300 a month to $1,425 a month. An employee with 2 or more dependents, or what is called family coverage, will go from $1,600 a month to $1,875 a month. And then for the years 25 and 26, the employer contributions will increase by $25 for the employees with 1 dependent and by $50 for employees with 2 or more dependents. Some other negotiated items include a deferred compensation match, an employer match of up to $50 monthly for those who are participating in the plan. There is also a medical cash in lieu provision. Employees will receive $250 per month for opting out of the employer medical plan. And I do want to note on the agenda report, it was incorrectly listed as $300 per month, and I believe the city clerk had issued an errata for that. There's an addition of a holiday that Juneteenth will be added. There is also longevity pay for $300 per month for 10 years of service as a sworn police officer, with up to 5 years of credit with another agency. And this will help us obtain laterals onto our staffing. There's also enhanced uniform allowance. The uniform allowance will increase from $92.50 per month to $125 per month. And then there is a boot reimbursement that has been added of up to $250 annually. Okay, for the fiscal year 24-25, the 3% salary increase, the health cash in lieu, and the employer contributions to the medical were included in the budget. So the projected annual fiscal increase to the general fund is listed in this slide. And so for 24-25, it'll be $74,400. For 25-26, it'll be $127,012. And then for 26-27, it's $134,549,000. I'm going to go ahead and open up to discussion. And I just want to let you know that we have Monica McQueen on the line. She's the chief negotiator during these POA negotiations.
Thank you. Public comment, please come forward. Welcome.
Daniel Miller. I'll be the last guy to say cops don't earn what they get. But at some time, we have to have a little checks and balances here. When I was on the council, we had negotiated and said, get rid of admissions day, which was one of the holidays that the police got. And our city attorney at the time took it upon himself without telling the council that he didn't take that out of the final contract. So now we're looking at adding even another holiday. So, and people got to realize when you add a holiday to public safety people, that means there's people out there now that are working that are getting paid double time for that. Also, we used to give $750 in lieu of medical, and we were told you give medical, You'll never have problems getting police in Pacific Grove again. But from what I hear, we're having problems getting police in Pacific Grove again, even though we're giving medical. So much for that one. But the $300 in lieu of used to be $750. And when medical was given, there was no clawback of that $750. So now we're playing that same ring around the rosy game where, oh, so if my wife's covered and I'm covered under my wife, then now I get $300 more a month. So when does it stop? When do we take into account the people in Pacific Grove, and there are a lot of them that are on fixed incomes, that keep getting nailed with sales taxes, property taxes, school taxes, and every other kind of tax that people can come up with. And public service employees are all sitting pretty good, 3%. And in a couple of years, we might look at it and compare it to other cities. Why aren't we comparing it to other cities now? Why is it we keep giving raises? Everybody else keep giving raises? Right now, a starting cop in Pacific Grove, I believe, is getting paid more than a starting cop in Los Angeles. Kind of weigh out what the risk, rewards, what you have to go through of being a cop in Los Angeles as opposed to a cop in Pacific Grove. And they're being paid more. So at some point in time, we need to get this under control. This includes fire too, which our input should be greater than it is with what Monterey does with their fire guys. And at some point in time, all city employees have to be as realistic as those in the public sector, or excuse me, in the private sector, and start realizing that there's not a gravy train that just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling while the rest of us are expended out of our existence as far as our budgets. Thank you.
Do we have any virtual public comment?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
Council discussion? Councilman Beck.
Thank you, Your Honor. I will be the first to say that I support law enforcement and fire. I mean, if we didn't have them, and yes, I do have a scanner, and yes, I do listen to calls throughout Monterey County. I think what we pay them is a nice amount, but they earn it as well. Regardless of if it's LA or Pacific Grove, they're still the same, similar calls. If life-saving measures come into play, police officers do CPR. And could save someone's life. So when it comes down to that, and we do have these discussions, it's not maybe an open session, but we are aware of other communities and what they get paid, and I support it. Yes, it does seem like a lot of money, but at the end of the day, they deserve it. Thank you.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you. I do have a question for staff regarding the projected annual fiscal increase to the general fund, which is listed down at the bottom of the agenda report. Basically, it represents, after 3 years, a $325,000 increase in expenditures for the POA. But are these numbers strictly healthcare and salary? Are those what those two numbers represent? Are those what those numbers represent?
Thank you. The numbers represent the fiscal impact is what it would be in addition to what we've already budgeted for this fiscal year. So we would need to go back and do a budget amendment because the COLA, the health in lieu, and the health benefit piece have been already added into the budget for this fiscal year.
So what do these numbers represent? Are they actual the increases? I'm not talking about the budget, what we've budgeted for. This is a cost. So what is the cost of the approval of this?
I might be able to help because I have it in front of me right now. All the factors that are going into that bottom line number are the base salary. So that's, the 3%, medical. Let's see, 2 steps. I'm not sure what that means. I don't ask what that means, but a deferred compensation we have some additional deferred compensation as a higher thing, longevity, pay, uniform, boot, and other or rounding error into the or what our formula is, but the two
Right.
steps, what is?
The two steps are that the final two steps in the salary range used to be a 3.75% spread. They're now going to be a 5% spread.
So basically salaries and benefits. That's,
Yes,
yeah.
all in.
That's right. So what this doesn't represent is the increase in our unfunded pension liability as a result of implementing these increases. And I've kind of been harping on this ever since I've been on council, that that analysis has to be included. In fact, we brought to council an actuarial analysis, Foster and Foster, that actually provided us with it. We paid for an analysis to be done to tell us how much these kinds of increases would also impact on our unfunded liability. And I'm quite frankly, I'm just a little disappointed that they weren't included in this amount as well. Thank you.
Thank you for the report. We had I believe, six closed session meetings where the Police Officers Association engaged with the city, with council in productive and respectful discussion. So that's much appreciated. The police force clearly has demonstrated that they have the community's interests in mind, and I believe we have an excellent police force. As far as pay, which is what people have focused on tonight, as Councilmember Beck mentioned, we are paying what our local cities are paying their officers. So it's just part of what it costs for a police officer. And in the extreme, if you're thinking that when we put out, and we have in past years, I'm not sure we've done it recently, but when we've put out solicitation for more police officers to apply, they're not lining up out the door. I know some impression that oh yeah, you can just pick up police officers on the street and perhaps even at lower pay. No, that's not the case. They go through a rigorous vetting process, and we lose police officers who find benefits other places. So I'm happy. I think this is win-win for the police officers, the police department, as well as the city and residents. So may I have a motion?
Well, I'll go ahead and I'll echo all your comments, Mayor, and make a motion to approve the recommended action.
Councilmember Coletti?
Thank you, Your Honor. There's no doubt that one of the important things the city does is provide police protections to its community. However, and it does cost money, and we are paying good money for that. However, what I'm hearing from my constituents is, on a routine basis, is where are the police? They're not seeing them out there in the community. They're not seeing them down there in downtown enforcing traffic violations, et cetera. So if we do have to pay for the service, fine, that's all well and good. But I'm not sure the community is too impressed with what they're seeing as far as just the activity of the officers out in the field. Thank you.
We have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Right along. 13B, Mr. Mogensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item involves the replacement of some police department equipment. And to give us a little bit more of a background and explain how we employ this equipment, or deploy this equipment, I should say, we'll have Commander Brian Anderson, an acting police chief, to explain that.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members. Axon was awarded the master service and purchase agreement for the police department tasers, fleet cameras, and body worn cameras in 2016. The lifespan of the equipment and service commitment of this initial agreement ended in 2020. In 2020, the city renewed the master service purchase agreement with Axon for tasers, fleet cameras, and body worn cameras. At the end of 2020 agreement, a need to renew and update our tasers, fleet cameras, and body worn cameras, ensure that the resources and the service of the equipment. The police department started using the equipment technology in 2016 due to the public's outcry for more transparency within law enforcement and less lethal options for police officers. The Monterey County Grand Jury in the 2015-2016 report, in essence, mandated body-worn cameras and the storage of that evidence. Axon has been a part of the Pacific Grove Police Department since 2016. We have relied on their equipment to help and enhance the transparency in our community and maintain our CLIA accreditation. Axon body-worn cameras are durable, field tested by Pacific Grove police officers. Axon staff has always been more than willing to help resolve any issues that arise. Axon has TASER, which no other company has. TASERs are an important part of an officer's daily equipment and are a necessity. TASER aids officers in situations where de-escalation is necessary. Pacific Grove police officers are familiar with the equipment and do not require any additional training with Axon equipment, besides annual training. It's important for officers to know and understand how to use their equipment, especially during tense situations. Officers will revert to their training, and Pacific Grove officers have been thoroughly and annually trained with Axon equipment. Evidence.com is a data management solution provided by Axon TASER that incorporates smart tracker technology. This technology allows agencies to pick and choose any object to track in the video and automatically redact faces and objects. Smart tracker technology also offers review and edit stage for processed redactions. The Pacific Grove Police Department can include audio redactions and change and blur levels to align with our policies. The Monterey County District Attorney's Office currently uses Evidence.com to store and manage its data evidence, in part due to Evidence.com's ability to maintain the original piece of video evidence during the workflow that includes a well-documented audit trail of the steps taken during redaction process to preserve the chain of custody. Evidence.com allows the Pacific Grove Police Department to properly secure and follow the chain of custody and monitor evidence in accordance with the law. Furthermore, removing all of our current digital evidence from Evidence.com would be a massive and costly project in itself, considering all the data that has been stored just over the last 5 years. To plan for the next contract period, the fiscal year 24-25 budget included a conservative $93,000 to fund year one of the anticipated new 5-year master service and purchase agreement with Axon. The city ordinance and procurement manual provide for sole source procurement for highly specialized equipment, goods, and services necessary to match the city's current equipment. We believe that this procurement meets those standards. The negotiated contract is a 60-month contract for all 3 products broken down by cost for each year. The Axon Tasers 10 is about $27,335,000. The Axon Fleet is about $25,045, and the body worn cameras are about $29,191. The total of $81,571 for the first year. This is a 60-month term, so the total agreement would be around $407,855.95. We'll open up to any questions.
Do you have any public comment? Please come forward. Welcome.
Daniel Miller again. I went out and priced these and in about 10 minutes found basically top of the line at about $80,000. This needs to go out for bids. You can't be doing something for over $400,000 without going out for bids and seeing what else is out there. We already talked about bids earlier for HDL, and you never know what you can get out there. For too many years, the city has not always done the right thing in getting bids, whether they were for city attorneys or whatever. So please put this out for bids, see what more is realistic. I mean, you're talking about things like, you know, hopefully all the officers have training in body cams and car mounted cameras, which we've already got. I don't know what the years of usefulness on it. I hope we're not leasing all of this and not building up any value in them. And tasers, I would think for the most part, once you're taught on how to use a taser, you pretty much know how to use a taser. So the concept, and almost $500,000 in this contract is going toward these three pieces of equipment that, and $80,000, by the way, was very, worst possible case scenario kind of thing. For the best equipment, and also like one for everybody, like they're taking them home, like everybody has a car, everybody has a single, I think I multiplied it by 26 on each of the things. So please don't just take this at face value. I find it interesting that the police chief, who we haven't seen in a year, her name's on this, is appearing like she, went out and got these bids or something. Would have been nice for her to weigh in tonight and tell us what went through this, but I figure after a year of paying full salary to her, probably we're not entitled to actually have input from her in person. Maybe she's not, working because maybe she can't talk. I don't know. So at some point in time, if we could maybe just put this out for bid and see what else comes back, because this is a large amount of money, especially on top of the amount of money that was just done. And again, sometime, we have to get some control over this. There's not this endless supply of money. We don't have a fountain of money downtown that just spews this out like it seems people think sometimes in the decision-making process. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any virtual public comment?
Thank you, Mayor. No hands are raised online.
Council discussion? Councilmember Pedori.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to also just, we received a speaker comment. I am just curious to know, typically do these go out for bid? I heard you mention that Taser, there's only one company that provides this service, which is Axon. Is that the reason for us to just move forward with Axon?
There's a couple of reasons. One is we've been using Axon products since 2016.
Mhm.
The other is evidence.com, which is the management of enormous amounts of video and evidence that we already have stored, basically since 2016. The other aspect is there is no other product out there for law enforcement other than Taser when it comes to tasers.
And just that kind of makes like a sole kind of supplier for this, which is fantastic, I think, for the supplier. But on that evidence kind of note, do we have the rights on all that evidence data? So for, let's say for tomorrow, a new vendor comes in and we want to switch to the new vendor instead of Axon, is all that data now the city's data, and will they allow us to retain it so that we can actually move to a different provider?
We could, but moving it would be an enormous cost.
Okay. And so that requires, when you say it's at an enormous cost, that's something because Axon does not provide help with it, or?
With my limited knowledge is when you're importing data, basically everything is about the size of the data, right? And so the company is going to charge you for the amount of data that it's going to move. And when we're talking about video and photos over years and years and years that we are required by law to maintain and retain due to criminal investigations and criminal cases that are moving through the courts, we have no choice but other than to retain that video footage, which all comes down to data storage and that amount of it. And we would have to move it over to a new company, which then would require us to retrain staff on the management of it and have to create new workflows with the DA's office in regards to how we get that evidence to them when those court cases come up.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that detail. I would say that, I mean, it seems like there's no way out. We have to go with Axon here. But for the future, knowing that this is a 5-year contract, I think it would be helpful for us to at least plan towards what if Axon does not exist, for example, in the future, or what if we want to do something with a different provider? Just take steps towards making sure that we are at a position at the 5-year mark to do the transition, just in case. But thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I think that this is kind of the situation on the ground now for officers and in the United States, the cameras. And I think we want to give them the best technology possible because I honestly think that investing in this technology will increase the efficacy of the arrest, it will decrease the our potential liability for lawsuits. When you don't have things like those fleet cameras on the vehicle, stories start getting told, and the better the technology, the more evidence you can actually get, the more recording you get, the more audio you get, statements become more clear. And so I really think those fleet cameras are really important, and especially to get the best possible, because I've seen some, on a clip, a YouTube clip or something like that, where it's not that good. You can't really tell what the person's saying, and all of that stuff is very important for a court case or for defending the city in a lawsuit. The body worn cameras, that is just absolutely critical now at this point, to, in order to A, prosecute cases, but also B, to defend the conduct of the officer involved in the arrest. Should that come into question, you have everything there that you need. And then, of course, the tasers, we don't really have an option for another option. So, and I think the tasers, that's like the use of lethal force or not. I mean, that's absolutely critical. So I don't really want to be penny wise and pound foolish on this. I think it's super important that we invest in our police staff, and we obviously just invested in the on the pay side, on the salary and benefit side in our last item. But I think this is an investment in the infrastructure of the police department. And 2016 has been a long time. I think about all the things that have happened in the world in the last 8 years. It's been quite a bit. So I am in favor of it, and it's an investment in our department, and appreciate the report, and thank you very much.
Councilmember Beck.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Smith as well, because not only does it protect our department, it protects our residents as well. It's information that we have as needed, and I think we save money in the long run, just like you said, from a liability standpoint. So I would be in favor of it. And then I have a question. How many officers do we have in Pacific Grove? Just on our department.
So we're authorized 23. Sorry, we just had officer's last day was this morning. Resigned to go to another agency.
I'm sorry, what officer was that?
Officer Justin Sue.
Oh, okay.
So I think we're at 18 right now.
So we're down about 5.
Mhm.
Okay. And we're recruiting at this time?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
We're ready for a motion. Councilmember McDonald.
Yeah, I just want to do one quick follow-up. I mean, it sounds unfortunately like we're kind of stuck with the company because it costs too much to leave, and they may be a good company. It's actually no reflection on that. But my question is, in a lot of our contracts, there is a clause where if you decide you want to get out sooner, you can. Is this a 5-year? And it's a definitive 5-year. Is there room for negotiation if we find another agency, just so we know that information?
Yeah, the contract does allow us to end it if we wish. Also, part of the contract is we get a refresh on all the equipment right at the end of, towards the end of this contracts.
Okay.
So we get the latest and greatest equipment throughout the contract and re-upped right at the end of the contract.
Okay, so it sounds like we're providing good equipment, we're providing good quality. But if for any reason we decide at some point that the costs are escalating beyond, maybe we start seeing other companies that can provide the same thing, it might be worth assessing, but it sounds like the best option at the moment. Thanks.
Councilmember Emilio.
I'd be willing to make a motion, and I think
Please.
this is a safety issue for the Pacific Grove Police Department. I'll motion to authorize the mayor to execute the master services and purchasing agreement with Axon Enterprises for 5 years for fleet cameras, body worn cameras, taser equipment for a total amount of 407,855.99.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes.
There's a discrepancy in the report between 7 versus 470, and I just want to make sure which one we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah. Yeah, we did our best. We should have corrected that fully in the errata that we issued.
Okay, just for my, which one did it end up?
7.
It's 407. Okay, that's good. Okay, great. Thank you.
And I'll note to Councilmember McDonald's comments, this is renewable on 1-year intervals. So we're not approving, we're approving potentially that full amount over 5 years. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
I am.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, let's take a 10-minute break and return at 8:02.
Recording stopped.
They're watching the convention and the meeting. So do I tell you next slide? Yes, yes. I mean, I'll try and move it along, you know. How are you? Good. You never know, we still have one. That's true, 2 items, you know. What I wasn't able to mention though, the city of Carmel, what they did was they laid down rumble strips, temporary rumble strips. I know, I looked at you and then I looked back. And so, and also. It's not gonna get small, right? That's great. This, out of nowhere. Yeah. Well, they're on this, but I'll tell you, stress like, you're not experiencing. Did you send that car? Yeah, you're right.
All right. I just recovered from my second bout of COVID. Just annoying. Well, you know, I was listening to, you know, some epidemiologists from the East Coast was on NPR, and they say, well, after the next
Recording in progress.
Yeah. Yeah, the music is good. Something.
Your Honor. First, I'd like to start with thanking Mr. Mogeson and Mr. Go and the Pacific Grove Police Department regarding this situation because, you know, it was, council talked about it in June, right after the transition happened with the new stop sign at 15th and Pine. You know, it's like, how did this happen? When did it happen? And I was not pleased with the setup. And even taking some videos of cars running through the stop sign and so forth at 15th Street. And I thought, what happens once school starts? And I was not favorable to the setup. And it wasn't until school started and what came to light for me, and you can start the presentation, Sandra, please. What came to light for me was one, the congestion by the parents standing outside of Robert Down School, and then the crossing guard. We can go to the second slide too. The crossing guards at 15th and Pine, and talking to her as well, saying, you know, how's it working for you here? And she said, it's not. I almost got clipped, those type of things. But what came to my attention more than anything was students walking from the middle school. So let me read this real quick. So safety for our residents. Crosswalks and stop signs at Pine and Fountain Avenue were removed in May of 2024. Crosswalks for our students at the middle school start at Cynics and Fountain Avenue and continue until the students reach Pine Avenue. And if you could show that photo and then we'll go back. So the next slide, please. So what I did is you'll see Fountain Avenue and Cynic. So our children, our middle school students are walking from the middle school, and there is a crosswalk on both the west and the east side. You'll see it at Fountain and Gibson. So every block there is a crosswalk all the way down to Fountain Avenue and Spruce. And these are all from the middle school. Next slide. And this was a crosswalk at Pine and Fountain prior to May of 2024. And as you could see, it's a nice long sidewalk or crosswalk. And if we can go to the next page real quick, and then we're going to go back to the slide. So what I observed were these middle school students crossing Pine Avenue with no crosswalk. And as you can see, you know, their routine for them, they walk home from school, they probably have always crossed at that intersection, and now they are crossing blindly. If you can go to the next slide real quick. Before we get to questions, go back. And then there's a video I'd like to show you. And Sandra has that. And while she's queuing that up, this has really been a concern watching these students. And when you see it on video, and that's a very large truck that just went through, but they waited. And they're still looking for cars. And then they are literally going across the street, and that's 4 lanes of traffic that they are crossing. And you see students on the other side too. That's their path of travel. And once they get across that crosswalk, they continue down Fountain, and then there's a crosswalk at Laurel and Fountain. It goes all the way down to Lighthouse. If you can go back to the third slide, I believe it is. One more. Residents, which includes our students, are now crossing Pine Avenue. The intersection spans 4 lanes. You just saw the video. The absence of a crosswalk at this key intersection puts students at a major risk. I appreciate the fact that, you know, our traffic engineer put the stop sign at Robert Down. I'm still not favorable to it. But what I'd like to see happen is just that we can agree that that decision was made, and it's probably not the best decision, that we reinstall the crosswalks at a bare minimum, and hopefully with the stop sign, without waiting for a traffic engineer to make that decision for us. Because again, that is 4 lanes of traffic. And I don't know if city is aware, but we've actually had 2 residents killed on Pine Avenue. They were hit by cars. And that's never discussed. And it happened at 19th on 2 different occasions, 19th and Pine. So now we have these students who are walking from school, and we're looking for children and residents to just be walking and enjoying, walking to school and walking home. But that intersection is just not working for our little ones, for our big ones now. And again, I think we can revisit the stop sign or leave it at 15 and Pine. But for right now, I do think we need to paint the sidewalk or paint the crosswalk again. So that's what I'm proposing. And there you have it. Thank you.
Public comment? Welcome.
Thank you. This is so absurd. Again, nobody ever answered the question, where's the survey that was done there that showed this was needed? Where was the traffic survey, the impact and everything else? You put in a stop sign, you're supposed to have studies. There were no studies to my knowledge that were ever done there. I walked my kids to school basically every day between the 3 of them and their staggered years for 12 years. I think that's probably more experience than anybody else up here has with walking to Robert Down School and being at that intersection. I never saw a problem. So I'm not sure why in this city we're keep trying to find problems to address when there isn't one that exists. It's manufactured problems. It's like justifying existence. So now we have a stop sign at 15th Street. What do you guess the traffic count is on there? 20 cars a day, maybe? So you stop on Pine for a 3-way stop for 15th, right? This is, I think, how it goes. But it's absolutely absurd that you're sitting there and nobody's coming up 15th Street, for goodness sake. It's like nobody actually sits there and experiences this. It's like we have a traffic engineer, I believe he's under contract, a traffic engineer that's making decisions with very little experience in the field on this stuff. And we're talking our kids' lives. Now, my kids don't go to Robert Down anymore. I don't have to deal with it. But you see these kids here in this town, acting police chief, probably the biggest problem is people going through crosswalks when people are in the crosswalks. I see it with people pushing carriages. I see it with little old people that oh, I'm not going to wait for that old person to get over here when I can just go through this crosswalk. And so to have kids now that are looking like they're playing Frogger out there trying to get across the street is just wrong. That problem didn't exist before. And we need to go back, and it's going to be a cost, but the stupidest thing is to say, well, it's a cost, so we're just going to leave our mistake. Go back to where it was before, please. These are our kids here. It's just like the roundabout. You got to start looking at who uses these intersections, who's impacted, what their ability is. I have a daughter, 11 years old, that goes to the middle school. I walk with her hand in hand to my house 3 blocks away, because more often than not, they're clowned. If you saw the stuff that goes on around schools in the morning and in the afternoon at 3 o'clock, it's absurd. So please, let's put it back to where it was before. There wasn't a problem.
I feel like I'm at the convention.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Carmelita Garcia, Pacific Grove resident. Thank you, Councilmember Beck, for bringing this forward. And I support it. And actually, I agree with Mr. Miller to just revert everything back to its original nature. My understanding that there were no warrants and there was no study. So I would think that, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and just put everything back. I agree with the crosswalks, and actually, I was at the intersection of Forest and Scenics where the middle school is, with the stoplights, and those crosswalks need to be refreshed. They are very, very faded. So if the city could make that a priority as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Any virtual public comment?
Yes, sir. Christy Thomas?
Hi. Yeah, I lived there. I saw my little apartment in the video, and I have written in and all that from the day this was done. Actually, I saw Mr. Deal and a policeman, and I talked to them the day they did this, and then the next day school was out. And so it wasn't as quite as bad then, but the problem is there is so much traffic on Fountain coming up from Lighthouse and down, say, from the community center. I have been honked at so much. I've almost got hit. I have an e-bike. And the thing is, on Pine, when school is in and there's bumper to bumper parking, those huge palm trees, you have to pull so far out on Pine, and there's no stop sign anymore. So just the other day, this guy just honked his brains out, and it's way too dangerous. It's too wide of an intersection. And again, if you look on either side, when people are parked on both sides of Pine, those trees are so huge, it's just not safe to pull out when they're not stopping, and it's way too heavy of an intersection. I mean, I've lived here 4 years, so I see the kids and parents walking down both sides of those streets, and it's just way too big of an intersection not to have that four-way stop back. And I would even suggest the lit crosswalk, because there's just too many. They're all on their little bikes and walking. So thank you.
No further hands, Mayor.
Council discussion. Oh, Mr. Mogensen.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we don't have any kind of presentation or anything, but wanted to first see if the council wanted to entertain, I guess, listening a little bit to what staff's thoughts are initially to this one before you do discussion, or?
Sure.
Okay. So I have, Mr. Go here with me as well, but I'll kind of start out by just saying that, in looking back at this item, this discussion seemed to have started in the middle of June or June 7th in 2023. There was seemed like a fairly robust discussion about wigwag lights, and then this kind of evolved into this project. Along with this, then kind of seemed to culminate in a report that was on February 14th that had plans that were attached to those. And those were, issued by our traffic engineer and things. And the concern that we would just have overall about just making the decision to just to change the roadway as it is today is that we don't have that same thing today. We don't have plans that demonstrate, where these markings would be on the road and stuff. And those are kind of things that give us a bit of cover, if you will, when it comes to issues that might happen in the roadway. I'll see if Mr. Go wants to add to any of that, and the attorney is also here.
Thank you, City Manager Mogensen. And we did bring forth these improvements to try to improve drop-off pickup times, crossings associated with Robert Down. We understand that there's the concern now with the middle school. I think we should really grant the opportunity for our traffic engineer to evaluate the situation, do an after-action evaluation, and make those recommendations to make it safer throughout that whole corridor, whether it's an improvement at Fountain and Pine, and how that improvement would carry through to Robert Down, and get with the police department, learn the behaviors that we're seeing that are happening out there, and how do we make this improvement and get our engineer to stamp those plans, and then the public works, come back to city council, make a presentation, and then have public works implement that plan. I think that's the smoothest way to move forward with this. That's my professional opinion.
Councilman Beck, you already presented this item.
Yes, and I'd like to make a comment to Mr. Go's comment. So was it brought as a report? Is it something we approved back in February, or was it report review only?
I have the staff report here. Ms. Hallaby did bring it forward, and it was actually your February 14th meeting because it got continued and it was received report. And at that time, it said the next steps would be to input this into the slurry seal contract. And that's what we did, because knowing that we were gonna be refreshing all of those markings through there, we wanted to start with like a blank slate. So that February 7th report presented the plan set that was prepared by our engineering staff. And then that we were going to implement that into the slurry seal report.
So it was a received report. Again, the reason I brought this forward is because we did talk about it in June and you said you would review the new crosswalk. And when school started, I started observing things. That's the reason I reached out to Mr. Mogeson, and he reached out to you. Again, the police department has been there. And when you say we have no plans, it's very obvious how it's been set up for 40 years there. And to say we need plans and we need to wait for the traffic engineer to come back from vacation, then we need to implement either staff, someone being out there to help these students in the morning and the afternoon. We need to do more than what we have done. And I think to wait for plans and those type of things, because things that happen at the city level happen very slowly. And yet a traffic accident, someone being hit, can happen very quickly. So again, I am not in favor of how this is all unfolded and what it looks like today. And I'm a visual person. So again, if I had seen those plans and it was something we approved, then we would have to stand behind it. But it was a report only, and it was going to be integrated inside the slurry program and so forth. And I know that the traffic engineer is not big on wig-wag lights, but they work at Lover's Point. People stop immediately for them. But right now, I'm here to talk about the crosswalk that was removed. And it seems to me that it would be very easy to put it back exactly how it's been for all these years, and a stop sign. What I'm hearing from the parents is, and I have lots of video that I'm not going to show, but I have a lot of video of cars just running through the one at 15th Street. So yes, the parents do need to get involved as well at drop off and pick up, but I'm talking pedestrians. I'm not talking about the cars right now, because my concern are the pedestrians. And sometimes we get things wrong and we just have to say, hey, we got it wrong. Let's just fix this. Because I know there are a lot of parents, and you have heard from them of their concerns, including the crossing guard. So, again, I think just stand up and say, hey, we got it wrong, and we're going to paint a sidewalk, or excuse me, a crosswalk. Not that big of a deal. Thank you.
Councilmember Beck, I truly hear your concerns, and I do still stand by my opinion that we should be discussing this with the traffic engineer. Accidents occur in crosswalks, especially on controlled crosswalks. And I understand that if an error is made, then we can revert it. But my concern is when there's a crosswalk that's not controlled, kids feel like that force field has gone up and they step into it. And we saw on the video that when there wasn't a crosswalk there, they looked numerous times both ways to make sure it was clear to cross. And I truly feel that we should just not be jumping into an infrastructure improvement, and we should truly evaluate this. That is my opinion. And if it comes to the conclusion that we should revert it back, by all means, then I think we'll bring forward that plan set and present that to the city council.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Thank you, Ron. So I think kind of what our public works director is alluding to, and potentially the city manager was alluding to, is that if we slap down a crosswalk there, we may not have design immunity for something that could occur in the crosswalk. And I'm definitely think that that's the case, because it's not going to be researched vis-a-vis the new stop sign. So we don't have the background in order to analyze that particular the placing of a crosswalk on that particular intersection. I just want to do what's safest for the kids. So I'm at this point, I'm thinking that, let's look at it again. Let's potentially talk to the school district as well about what their thoughts are on the new setup there. Because as people have pointed out, I spent many years, as a parent, driving through 15th was like a warning, and then the Pine and the Fountain intersection was crosswalks. But I agree that we shouldn't just go backwards like right now tonight. I think we got to look at the whole situation. And I also think it's part of a larger issue in the city, because if you carry through this particular item tonight that's been presented by Councilmember Beck, it doesn't go all the way. And then we have another issue down at Lighthouse because we pulled out that crosswalk for safety reasons. So, you know, I think we got to kind of take almost like a neighborhood view of all of these different sidewalks in order to really understand what we're doing. So that would be my approach, and I think actually it would be the safest approach, because we're going to analyze various things related to this particular change that was made.
What I heard when the changes were made, and I'll admit, it sounded like the changes at the crosswalks on Pine near Robert Down were not well advertised, and people were caught by surprise. So I heard complaints that people were caught by surprise, not necessarily that they thought the crosswalk at that spot was safe and that spot was dangerous. It was just the fact that there was a change. And then another fact is, I've heard many times over the years, and we've seen in the video, we saw behavior by pedestrians that is not safe, and that drivers dropping off the kids, pulling illegal U-turns in front of Robert Down in the morning. So the drivers and the pedestrians also need to take responsibility and obey the rules of the road. Now, I agree. I heard several people from the public, I think from council, that work was done without studies. We need some studies. I absolutely support that. So I support having our traffic engineer get involved. I thought the comments from Mayor Pro Tem Smith about let's look, well, he called it a neighborhood view. I've been asking for years, literally, for safe routes to school. And if nothing else, this screams out the safe routes to school. And Councilmember Beck, great connection with the middle school and Robert Down. And so I couldn't have explained it better, justifying why we need safe routes to school. And we've already talked about it. Mr. Mogensen's been in contact with the school superintendent, Linda Adamson, and it's on our agenda for our subcommittee meeting. And so they are on board. I want to hear from the school district, from the parents. I want a survey of parents, particularly from Robert Down, but perhaps from other schools, as to what are the safe routes. And when they tell us what they think are the safe routes, then we are in a much better place, I think, to say, okay, this is where we need the crosswalks and stop signs. So let's be methodical. Let's not jump. I'm worried also about whiplash. If we like go back suddenly, tomorrow, erase some of the crosswalks that were recently installed and then put them over there, then we'll just have more confusion out there. Councilmember Emilio.
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem and yourself, Mayor. I do have a couple of questions though, Mr. Go. What would you estimate the timeline for the engineering and checking the crosswalks and everything? I have a couple of questions, but that's one of them. Do you have an estimate?
Yes, sir. I've been communicating with him just briefly while he's on vacation, and it's anticipated next week. So towards the end of the next week, I hope to get him out there and begin his evaluation.
Okay. And then for Commander Anderson, I'm just wondering, in the meantime, as they do the evaluation of this crosswalk, I know the SRO has a lot of places to be at, but maybe at extra patrol checks in that Pine Avenue where Robert Down is.
Yeah, most definitely. Last week, I had already directed our SRO along with available patrol to focus in front of Robert Down. We're going to go ahead and continue that effort until we can resolve this matter. I've also been out there with City Manager Mogeson and Dan and looked at the driver's behavior. I completely agree that there needs to be an evaluation, that there's certain changes that need to happen. I do agree with Dan Go in regards to I've 30 years of police work. My biggest concern about slowing down a crosswalk is that especially young people just think that there's an automatic force field once they step out into it. And they let down their guard in regards to looking both ways before they step out into traffic. And pedestrians are required by law to ensure that they're not going to immediately impede oncoming traffic when they step out into a crosswalk. They have a responsibility to ensure that they're stepping out into an environment that allows a driver enough time to stop for them. And so that would be my greatest concern about just throwing down a crosswalk without consulting an engineer and taking a hard look at how we can do it smartly so that we ensure that we address normal human behavior when they see like crosswalks. When we know address human behavior in regards to driving behavior, and that we take all those things into consideration. So in the meantime, the police department is going to focus its attention during the morning, the school hours when students are arriving and when they are leaving.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, regarding the law, who has the right of way when a pedestrian enters into a marked crosswalk? Pedestrian or the vehicle?
I'm going to assume that's a question for me.
Whoever wants to answer it, it's fine with me.
We have the city attorney online.
Well, if whoever's more familiar with the California State Vehicle Code would be probably the one to ask it or answer.
Well, I can volunteer that my understanding is the same as that of Brian Anderson's, that there is a need for the pedestrian to be aware of their surroundings and for example, if they were to step into a crosswalk when there's a car, immediately in their proximity that doesn't have time to stop, then that would create an issue, certainly. So in terms of right of way, I would say it would depend upon the circumstances and at what point the pedestrian enters the crosswalk.
Well, it's my understanding that the pedestrian has the cars must yield to the pedestrian when they enter into a crosswalk. So is that who has the right of way when a pedestrian enters into an unmarked crosswalk?
Unmarked crosswalks, excuse me, unmarked crosswalks, I believe, are the same rules as marked crosswalks. And for those that may not know, at every intersection, there is an unmarked crosswalk that runs from one side of the street to the other side of the street. So that's the so-called unmarked crosswalk. And to get back to your point about right-of-way, a pedestrian would not be having the right-of-way if they step in front of a car in a crosswalk where the car doesn't have an opportunity to stop. And a pedestrian doesn't automatically have the right-of-way just because they step into the crosswalk.
I don't think providing, arguments at the extreme answer the real question that's being asked here. And that is there a distinction of who has the right of way in a marked versus unmarked crosswalk? And my understanding of the vehicle code, at least 21954, says that the vehicle has the right of way and that the pedestrian has to yield to the vehicle in an unmarked crosswalk. So there is a difference in who has the right of way between a marked and unmarked crosswalk, apparently. And I think going back to, the mayor talked about going back and, originally council approved a CIP project to put wigwag lights there at Robert Down. It's true at our February 14th meeting, there was a proposal to change that, but that was placed on the consent agenda. It was not given a presentation to council. There was no real discussion of what was being done and why. And then when we discussed it in June, I specifically asked if a traffic study had been done for the removal of the crosswalks and the stop signs there at Pine and Fountain. And I asked it 3 times. And finally, the traffic engineer said, no traffic study had been done. So it seems to me getting a crew out there to mark the side or that mark the crosswalk is it's not as involved, I think, as we're perhaps making it. But to the mayor's point, undoubtedly, we have to do a study that justifies the actions taken, and we didn't do it previously. And it seems restoring across, and these videos that you took, and I commend Councilmember Beck for doing this. You can see clearly that those pedestrians, those kids, and Fountain definitely is a thoroughfare for kids coming out of the middle school. They were not comfortable with the situation, and we've created an environment that is dangerous for the school children crossing Pine Avenue. So if we're not going to do it right away, if we're not going to do it, or council doesn't take the action to reinstall the crosswalks, I would need to know from the city manager or whoever, when can we have this come back to council so we can ensure that we actually establish, a safe environment at that intersection? Because I think we took away a safe environment and now we're kind of stalling on it. And I'd like to see it come back sooner than later. Thank you.
Mayor, can I address the question here? Because I think Councilmember Coletti raises a point that we need to certainly consider here. I looked up Vehicle Code Section 21954, and what subsection A says is that every pedestrian upon a roadway at any point other than a marked crosswalk or within an unmarked crosswalk shall yield the right of way to all vehicles upon the roadway. So if someone is crossing, let's say mid-block, then certainly they need to yield the right of way to the vehicles. But as a practical matter, I agree with Brian Anderson's comment that when an individual is stepping either into a marked or unmarked crosswalk, they need to be aware of their surroundings, and there must be an opportunity for the vehicle to have a chance of stopping. So I'm finished on that point.
Thank you. And I think a lot of it comes down to what Commander Anderson said, is we need to look at human behavior. The best thing we can do, and I think this points to having the discussion with the schools, find out what are the patterns they see. I say, ask the students where they cross, because I think the students are going to best inform us what they're going to do. And no matter how many crosswalks we take out, people will continue to cross, also in part because an intersection implies an unmarked crosswalk. So just strictly removing one or even saying it's closed, people will cross where people will cross. So my big question is, so first of all, I 100% report as quick of a study as we can to see how we make the intersection safer. My question is, what do we do in the meantime? It sounds like there's some concern over putting the crosswalk back, and it sounds like the traffic engineer will be here next week, and maybe we can get an answer on that very soon. But is there something we can do with putting up some signs saying, warning ahead, something that, so I understand the idea of the force field. People see crosswalk, they assume I have right of way, I'll step out, and kids often distracted, busy, although without the crosswalk, they were more attentive potentially. So there is a concern because there used to be a stop sign and now there isn't a stop sign, that putting the crosswalk, they may assume safety where it may not exist. But at least the crosswalk warns people that there could be somebody coming in the crosswalk. So if we're not going to do the crosswalk back right away, can we get some signs out there to kind of warn people about the situation while the traffic study is being conducted? And can we have an agenda item back at our next meeting where we address what we've determined so far. I know maybe we can't get a whole assessment by that point, but it would be great to know exactly what we have been able to determine by the next meeting.
Did you, it sounded like you were directing a question to the city manager, or was that a
Sure.
rhetorical question?
Sort of both, but actually, if you have an answer, could we bring something back on the next agenda item, and could we make enough progress? At least determining, should we put the crosswalk back, and can we put some signs out to warn people of the risks?
Thank you, council member. To also, I believe it's the same topic that Councilmember Coletti asked. We discussed quickly, and I think there is different levels of what we can deliver. I think that the suggestion about having additional personnel to pay attention to things, that's a great one, because we are going to take it seriously as well. So with the addition of the SRO, or perhaps it's the CSO sometimes, I think at that corner also helping to educate kids, go over the crosswalk instead of running across Fountain. I think, in the meantime, can be one of the gaps we do. So that the traffic engineer will be back next week. We'll go out there and we'll spend some time with him. And what we think we can do by next meeting is come back and talk about some ideas on how to enter them, whether it's put out new signs, additional signage, the things such as that. I think there's many levels. I'm listening to everybody say. There's the initial thing. How do we deal with it? The initial situation. There's kind of an interim. Do we move stop signs? Do we not? And then there's the bigger thing about safe routes to school. And I think we're kind of trying to balance all that at the same time. And one thing I think would be the best approach would be kind of a incremental approach, and whether that's put out additional signs, have people out there educating people. I think the more we continue to change the road is going to make it tougher for people to adjust all the time. So we probably don't want to, if we're going to make big changes, we want to make sure that's going to be a good change, a permanent one for sure. In terms of the study, I'll ask Mr. Go if he's familiar exactly what the depth of that study would be that we need to do to develop the plan. But I think we can come back in the next meeting and update you and talk about some different concepts. And again, in the meantime, great suggestions in terms of having additional police out there to assist with crossers.
Thanks for that, because I think that really our goal does need to be the safe routes to school. It's a corridor where we have multiple crossings, and we need to recognize where the kids need to get to recognize where they're going to cross, whether we try to tell them not to or not, because adults would do it too. So I think that that's really important, but I think the phased approach makes sense because we want to immediately improve safety while also looking to the big picture of how do we make it safe. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Oh, thank you, Your Honor. I was just going to mention along the lines of this timing question. I think the next meeting is coming up really fast. We have to have the agenda done by Wednesday, I believe. So I would, and we also have a safe routes to school, a joint subcommittee meeting on the 10th where we were hoping to tackle, I believe that's going to be on the agenda, at least to get some facts for the city manager to listen to. And for all of us to listen to at the meeting. So perhaps it makes sense to phase it, but maybe not as quickly as right after the holiday, and given the next week's a week away, because it seems like a lift. I don't know.
I will say it will be a lift, but we're committed to doing what we can. I think it's the best we can commit to at the moment. Is we'll jump on it next week and see what we can do. And if we can have an update for you on the 3rd that is substantive, then we'll do that. But if not, then those are good suggestions about talking at the schools as well. Councilmember Beck seems to.
Yeah, Councilmember Beck.
Until we got to White House, and then we just made that change. So we do have safe routes to school, and we have had them for a long time. And if you walk children to school, you're aware of all those routes. So again, we did have a safe route to school for the middle school students, and that was their path of travel. It doesn't sound like we talked to the district before we made this change at Robert Down and took away the crosswalk. I do think it is the responsibility of the city at Fountain. It's not, I don't think that's a school district issue, but I do think we need to have staff out there to educate those students who are walking down. And just so you know, the school schedule is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. They get out at 3:05. So by the time they make it down there, it's closer to a 3:10, 3:15. And on Thursday, they get out at 2 p.m. And that's when that video was taken. And that's the same for the elementary school as well. But we always have had safe routes to school. I think we were all looking for bike trails to school or bike routes to school on Pine during the big plan that was going to be made. And there are a lot of children walking to school these days. So
Well, it sounds like maybe there's a communication gap with the school district because I've, for one, have never seen a map of safe routes to school. And our initial latest discussions with the school district, they did not produce one. And so maybe there is one, or some people had made a map and some in the past, but that needs to be brought forward and something that the school district, which also means the parents, I'm assuming, would buy into. Right? Councilmember Pedori.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to remark that, first of all, I'm happy that we're discussing a topic about kids and traffic. So thank you, Councilmember Beck, to shed light on this item. I like all the comments here. There's nothing wrong here. What I'm sensing is that the routine that students, drivers do in the city, if that routine is impacted, we need to do a better job at communicating why that routine is being impacted. And we're not doing that today. And this is exactly why we're in this situation right now. So I think in the future, whatever be the case, in fact, even for this particular kind of like intersection, like Councilmember McDonald mentioned, we need to educate. And I don't like looking at videos where children are like crossing like this. And for that matter, this happens in a lot of spots in town. And so we do need to, this is a great wake up call for us to say, what do we need to do for safe routes to school across the entire city? And let's start at this particular kind of Pine Avenue to begin with, but it needs to be discussed really holistically. I want the school district involved. I want as much survey as possible. All the items that are mentioned here, really. But I would say if there's any way we can at least review this item, because this has happened really recently, and it appears that there may be a situation right now that is happening because of this very recent change. If there's any way to expedite this, I would appreciate that. So whatever we can do by the next meeting or after the school board meeting, we can review this together and take the next action. Thank you.
Councilmember Kalei.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, I found the relevant vehicle code. It's 21950 subsection A. The driver of the vehicle shall yield the right of way to a pedestrian crossing the roadway within any marked crosswalk or with any unmarked crosswalk at an intersection, except as provided in this chapter, et cetera, et cetera. So we heard psychology kind of being thrown at us that kids have this perceived notion of a force field existing when they enter into a crosswalk. I think a more appropriate perspective is to turn that around. And what is the psychology of the driver when they see a pedestrian in a marked crosswalk as opposed to an unmarked crosswalk? I can tell you what it is for me. When I see someone in a crosswalk, I know I respect they have the right of way. And when you take away that crosswalk, that's what's being taken away. And I don't think that's being fully appreciated. One of the mitigation measures that we discussed back in June when this was moved, the crosswalk was moved, was that there would be a flashing stop signs down there at 15th. I haven't seen those installed. What's the schedule on that?
Councilmember Coletti, we just received them on Tuesday of this week. So we're scheduling them to be installed.
Okay.
At 15th Street. Yes,
Can I jump in?
please.
I pressed the button this morning. They work.
Mayor Peak,
15th.
Mayor
Pun.
Peak, Councilmember Coletti is referencing, the stop sign
Oh, the
at
stop
15th
sign.
Street that will have the red lights around it that will flash when a car approaches. Not 24/7, motion centered. That's what took us a little longer to get it because I didn't want to have the 24/7 flashing. Motion centered stop sign. So when a car approaches, they'll light up.
I think the
Stop
neighbor,
sign.
I think the neighbors at that corner appreciate that.
I hope so.
There
At the
are,
church.
on either side, there are yellow pedestrian diagonal signs. You press the button. In the daylight, I'm not sure they're effective. But the stop signs are a different story. But I really like the fact that you're going to beef up the patrols during the schools. At the start of school and at the end of school, and think about maybe some obstructions, some, I don't know, some little barricade with some signs, don't cross Pine Avenue here, go over there, sort of thing. I think that makes sense on a temporary basis until we sort this out. Councilmember McDonald.
Just kind of to get back to the heart of the question, because I think that the agenda item is requesting the crosswalks be put back in right away. And there was some mention of possible unintended consequences. So if we're talking about phasing things in, do we currently know what unintended consequences we need to be concerned about that would have us, that would educate us that we should maybe wait until we talk to the traffic engineer? Are there enough concerns with that just putting the crosswalk back before we do that would be ill-advised? To whoever I guess has the answer to that.
Councilmember McDonald, it's when a plan set or infrastructure like this is installed, it's best to have it evaluated, documented, and stamped by a licensed engineer that is familiar with these infrastructure improvements. That way, everything's documented from a legal standpoint that we're doing this per these professionals that are licensed. That's my recommendation. Anytime we make an improvement like this, we have our traffic engineer evaluate it, give us the plan. We create the work order per that plan to then do the installation.
And so we had that to change it from what it was to what it is now. So you're saying we should have that same stamp before we change anything back. Is that correct?
That's correct, because the existing infrastructure is still going to be there. So how do we tie in the new improvements with the existing improvements that we've already installed? And it's not just the crosswalk. So how does the advanced warning signs look for those crosswalks? Where are those signs placed? Where are the advanced warning signs on the roadway? And where are those placed in relationship to the crosswalk? Just so that driver knows it's coming, and all of that is documented per the MUTCD with a manual for uniform traffic control devices. It's all strictly documented. That's assigned by our traffic engineer on that plan set for Public Works to implement. That's my recommendation, and that's what I'm specifying today.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. So based on that, I guess my understanding of that is while we want to move quickly, we want to make sure we do it correctly in the way that best promotes safety, but also staying within our protections as a city and our responsibility to have plans approved. So I guess what I would say is we definitely need to move forward. And I also thank Councilmember Beck for bringing this up so we can act quickly. But I'm hoping that with the additional education and the additional enforcement and just public safety presence there, that can get us through the point where we can get that information and start implementing the new plan. So that would be my suggestion.
Mr. Mayor, I just add, I think to kind of bring this all back into the big picture, what we're concerned about, because, very valid concerns. the traffic engineering portion of all this is, this highly technical stuff, that will give you the best chance that you're going to make a safe situation on the roadway. But at the end of the day, it's really about, if a person gets hit by a vehicle, the person loses, no matter if they're in a crosswalk or the middle of the street, or if somebody runs a stop sign. So I think that's what we're trying to do, is come up with the best science for how to minimize those types of things. And to take the best approach that isn't gonna, I think one thing that, you talked about the routine. I'm not sure that it's very embedded at this point, but people might be getting used to the current stop sign right now. And if we put a new one without some kind of a warning, like we talked about, possibly we could do better this time. We probably want to really educate people, put out flashing boards to let them know, maybe other things that might slow people down before they get there. And that's all the type of measures that I think we want to think out a little bit before we do. So you don't have, you're driving along and all of a sudden, oh, stop sign, you slam on the brakes. I mean, is that sometimes worse? You have people rear ending you, and so.
Councilmember Beck.
Sorry, Your Honor, I have another question. So I'm bringing up the map from that February meeting. And I was wondering if you could just bring it up to show us the crosswalk at Fountain and Pine on the east and west side, that it was removed. Because I have it up on my phone and I'm just trying to determine, because you still have stop on there. And if that was the attachment.
Councilmember Beck, if you would like to give us 1 minute, we can get that.
Thank
up
you.
there.
What I'm looking at. That's the plan. So they put the new crosswalk there, but they didn't show that they deleted that one. Mhm.
Do we need to take a break, take a 5-minute break here? Let's take a break. We'll return at 9 o'clock.
Recording stopped.
Oh, already, yeah.
Well, just in
does say to remove them, but yet on the map, it's still showing.
Well, yeah, they're trying to grade out.
Yeah.
And there's nothing on the house.
That says to take away, yeah.
These go away, yeah. Agree.
I mean, I'm looking, it says remove cable.
This was these stuff.
Recording in progress.
Hey, Mr. Mogensen, do we have the visual? Do we have the slide? Okay, Councilmember Beck, this is the slide that you asked for.
Thank you, Your Honor. And so in the wording of the report, it clearly says to remove the crosswalk. But looking at the map, it does look lightly shaded, but I think they probably should have indicated removal or something more that doesn't show a crosswalk. Including the writing, because they still have writing on there that says stop.
Councilmember Beck, I see your concern. But I don't have a response. I mean, I see your concern, and when a plan like this is developed, there's obviously specs and technical booklets that go with it that would have specified the grinding out of those, and that's what this is alluding to.
Okay.
Any further discussion? I think we've provided a lot of feedback to our city manager. Right. All right, without further discussion, then we'll move on to the next item, which is 14A. And we have a guest presentation from a resident. Former Mayor Carmelita Garcia, welcome. Red light should be off.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Did you hear me when I said I'll have you out by midnight? Okay, all right, okay. Anyway, so I just want to thank you very much on behalf of PG Deer Awareness for allowing us to come and present our annual report. And I want to introduce Renee Nesper. She's one of our board members and she's here tonight. So let's get going. So next slide. Okay, so briefly, we're going to embark on our rutting season, which begins mid-October and runs through December. And it seems like we're just getting done with fawning season, which ran pretty long this year. And so the doe will become a little more aggressive than what we are familiar with. And the buck have already begun to appear. It's like, oh, Lord, anyway. So we have that to look forward to. And as a reminder, does are generational, so they will return to yards that they have given birth in already to do it all over again in the spring. So our fawning season this year and going forward begins in April and ends typically May, late June, sometimes mid-July. It just depends. And this year, our first reported fawn was born on April 8th. And also this year, the first that I know of, we had triplets born down in the beach track, Mayor. Next slide. This just goes over the process that urban trapping takes that we have our agreement with for the removal of deceased deer off of private property. It's a very thorough process. They do a good job at disinfecting the surrounding area where the carcass did lie. And they also work with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, our local office. And every now and then, more often than not, the carcass is examined to try and determine the cause of death. And then those results are forwarded to the state of California department. The photographs I felt were important to share because these deer, particularly the doe, they are very sensitive and they do know when their fawns have been killed or have died and what have you. And this buck was very unusual, who had been hit head on evidently, and its rack had totally collapsed. This did not happen in Pacific Grove. He happened to meander into town for a couple of weeks. The residents at Canterbury Woods were very watchful of him and reported periodically to us about the progress. And eventually he did pass away in a yard around that general neighborhood. Next slide. So creating public awareness, we've had just such an overwhelming response and support from all different areas throughout town. And I want to note that our website, the city was gracious enough, thank you, Mr. Mogensen, to add on the city's website what to do in the event of coming across injured mammal, sea life, whatever, and a deer. And so we did capture that post and we have included it on our website and it's on our Facebook page, PG Deer Awareness. And it was also posted on Nextdoor PG, which has received 1.6 thousand views. So good job, Mr. Mogensen. And then the PG Chamber, we are members of the chamber, and they have a Facebook following of 20,000 and an Instagram following of 11,000. So there's some more awareness and presence being developed via those two social medias, which indicates, just like on Nextdoor PG, when they see us, they see Pacific Grove as a whole, and the tourists also see that as well. Next page. So our public outreach, we were very, very busy this year, and next year, well, beginning now, actually, we're going to remain still very busy, adding some new outreach stuff and what have you. This past week, Superintendent Adamson and I did communicate, and she has agreed to add deer into her communications to the families when she sends them out and asks for them to drive safely, particularly around the middle school, because there is a herd of doe there. Of about 6, or sometimes 8, that literally live there, and they meander back and forth between the middle school and Canterbury Woods. Next slide. So moving forward, what we're going to be embarking on is communicating with the major delivery services within Pacific Grove, and we've listed some of them. Do meet and greets. We're going to do press releases, letters, and what have you, and really get a hands-on on these particular delivery services because sometimes they do drive real fast in Pacific Grove. And another goal is to raise funds for narrative signage for residents and tourists alike to talk about our native deer and to provide some sort of education for them. Next slide. So, according to our local California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Pacific Grove has the highest mortality with our deer. As an example, I was told Monterey might have 3 or 4 deer that actually have to go and get picked up. We far exceed that number. And so this year, what we did experience was lungworm, which is a parasite that the deer pick up from, well, eating snails and what have you, because that's the little critter that carries it. And so what happens is that when the deer eat, they regurgitate their food, and then the deer behind them come and consume the same stuff. And so that's how it's spread. The parasite consumes the intestines and what have you, and it gets to the point for the deer that they are unable to eat, and it develops into chronic wasting disease, and ultimately death is the end result there. The food source here locally has diminished greatly, and it's a result of the construction that is occurring and has been occurring for years, where homes are either being remodeled or tore down completely and rebuilt. And what is going along with that is the yards are being removed, and they're being replaced with big, tall, solid fences. I realize it's, property owners' right to do what they want, but I think, going forward, maybe, we can rethink that a little bit, just to try and preserve what we can publicly to keep a food source going for our deer. Next slide. So here are the statistics, and I do need to correct them somewhat. So the 2024 line, if you go over to the total number of fawns, it's 92. Oh, it is corrected. Okay, never mind. Ignore me. And so the reported deaths, we had 11 doe, 3 buck, and 10 fawns. The fawns that died, 3 of them were fawns that belonged to the herd at the middle school. 2 of them were hit by a car, and 1 actually died while being born. It was dropped on a driveway, and so died instantly. These numbers do not reflect what the community service officers may have been called out to pick up on public property. There was no tracking of that information. And so, these numbers are already outdated because while I'm preparing the report, we have new sightings of new deer and new buck and new fawn. And so, I'll update the report at some point in time and get that back out to you if you're interested. Okay, next slide. So this was a great photograph, of our local deer enjoying the Asilomar, and tide pooling, call it what you want, but I thought that was pretty cute. Christine Johnson did that photograph. And next slide. You know, we always have to thank our community because it's a pretty big community out there that really, really enjoy our deer and have really expressed a genuine interest in learning more about them. And so the photographs that we get that are sent to us are just, they're phenomenal. They're very heartwarming and they really do tell a story. So you can go on our website and we post them as often as we can to share with everybody who's interested in taking their time to look at them. And we're also at the farmers market every Monday from 2:30 to 5:30. And so next slide. Oh, but that's it. So anyway, so that's the report for this year. So short and sweet. Thank you very much for your attention and support in what we do. So thanks.
Do you have any public comment? Please come forward. Any virtual public comment?
I do, Mayor. Kim?
Thank you. And I want to thank Carmelita for bringing this forward and for doing all of this educating to the public about our deer, because we do love our deer. I know many people who stop to take a look at them, especially the tourists who usually stop right in the middle of the street to take pictures of them. But I want to remind people that when they're jogging on the rec trail or walking on our sidewalks or see the deer there, that to just give them a little space, because oftentimes people walk directly at the deer and then chase them into the street. This happened just the other morning at about 6 in the morning. A jogger ran directly at the deer on the sidewalk. And I know enough about the wildlife to know how the deer would respond. So I was able to stop my car before my car hit the deer that was scared into the traffic. But this happens repeatedly. So we just want people to be aware to give the deer space to get away from you first, and then continue on your walk or run. It's safer for the moms and especially the fawns that will be following behind them. Also, to remind people that if you do hit a deer, you must stop there and call the police, not leave the scene. So that is a requirement. And thank you again to Carmelita and the Deer Group for educating all of us about our amazing deer. Thank you.
Lisa Ciani?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say it's tremendous what Carmelita and the other volunteers are doing to help people learn about the deer here and appreciate what it means to share our community with them. I mean, before we got to move here 12 years ago, we were enchanted. Obviously, our whole family was enchanted by the deer, and I still am. We all still are. Tourists, obviously, I just can't believe their eyes a lot of the time. And yet, of course, there are people in the community who have their beautiful flower gardens, and they're not so fond of the deer. And people with large dogs are terrified of the deer very often. When I had small dogs, but I knew to cross the street or, back off or at least stay on the other side of the street. With larger dogs, it is more difficult, and you really do need to get out of the way. And yet people want to take a picture at the same time while they've got their large dogs. So there's a lot of issues, and it is really, it's amazing to see how many people slow down when they see deer, or you see a car stopped in front of you and you don't know why, but this is PG. So then you remember, oh yeah, there's probably a deer out there. So, but it's just tremendous that we have this opportunity, thanks to all of Carmelita's efforts and the others, to learn more about them. And I hope that we can continue to gather data. It would be great to have police department data of how many deer are picked up. But just thank you to Carmelita and the deer awareness.
Both our hands are raised, Mayor.
Council? Councilmember Beck.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to say thank you for the presentation and I learned a lot as well. Thank you.
Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you. Reiterating the thanks, and I really appreciate, especially when members of the community help us and educate us in things that maybe not everyone knows about. And I think it really does a great public service because I know they put rack cards in the hotels, for example, at the conference center. I think that's important because tourists may not be expecting deer. And so it helps residents understand the behavior of, as Ms. Chiani pointed out, avoid them, especially during fawning and rutting seasons when they're going to be more protective or other circumstances. So thank you so much for all the work. We greatly appreciate helping keep both them and our residents safe.
All right, without further ado, thank you very much, Ms. Garcia. That brings us to the end of our agenda. I want to thank the public for participating in the meeting, for city staff, my colleagues. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.